Okay. I think this is okay. I think I understand. This one should be fine. We'll go back, refresh this. The bitrate is kind of no. The bitrate's fine today. This time it's fine. Let's refresh this real quick. Let's refresh YouTube real quick. Soda Pop and Gym Arc, dude. Gym Arc Day 6. Oh my god. Okay, view your channel. We're not currently live, but we can change that. I think if we press this little button. Boop. Yeah. Now, give it a few seconds and we should be live on both. Sorry, is live on both. I can see him. 400,000 subscribers on YouTube. 4.7 thousand videos. Sorry, you has. Wow. It should work the same for me. I'm not sure. It also did absolutely destroy the quality. So we're gonna go see if it turns this off. Dude, I can't even play this game because I don't like playing it without the fucking, without add-ons, man. Let's see if there's add-ons. Yet. Nope, not yet. Okay. See if the bitrate seems to have normalized. Hey, Davi. What's up, dog? Okay. Let's go check your quality while watching my own stream. Hey, Davi. What's up, dog? Fuck, champ. Forgot about emotes, dude. Okay, quality's fine. Quality's fine. Okay. Holy crap, I'm getting so hungry. Wow, 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 wow. The art of no ability. Okay, let's watch the lore of Pokemon.
Pokemon may be one of the most beloved franchises of all time, but it's also a series that obviously did not put a lot of thought into its lore. The way the lore has been built generation by generation has created so many downright dubious and beautifully bizarre moments, and I want to talk about a lot of those moments today, and also go over the lore in general so it makes sense how those moments fit into the bigger picture. To me, there's really only one place to start when it comes to lore, and that is, of course, the creation myth, as it kind of plays a role in all the other lore. First, there was nothing. Then, there was an egg that would hatch into Arceus, the first Pokemon and being in existence. Existing in a void of nothingness, Arceus then created Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina to govern different aspects of the universe. Dialga's birth created the flow of time, flowing like a vast river. Palkia's birth stabilized space and created the infinite sky, destroying the walls of our world. What's interesting about this information, which comes from Legends Arceus, is it insinuates that Earth, or Poke-Earth or whatever, existed before Palkia and was among the first things Arceus created. Because obviously for the walls of the world to be destroyed, the world has to exist in the first place.
Folks do. Hold on. For I'm just going to call it Watch Party. We'll switch it back in a second, just I want it to be mostly the thing, not me. So for Watch Party, let's add some sources. Let's add the webcam. Check. But let's make it small. Right? That should be similar to this. Let's add Chrome. There we go. And let's put the webcam on top. There we go. That's pretty much what we're looking for.
Giratina was created to govern antimatter. However, as the shadow to Arceus' light, Giratina was deemed too violent to be left in the universe and was banished to the Distortion World, a world that doesn't follow any rules of the regular universe. No Pokemon exist here aside from Giratina. Time doesn't flow, and space isn't stable. These two worlds can emerge at Spear Pillar, and Cynthia seems to think that Giratina is able to merge them himself if both worlds are in danger, but it might require Dialga and Palkia to be incapacitated as well. Next, Arceus created the Spirit Pokemon, who would give all the beings on Earth specific traits. There is Yuxi, whose birth gave beings the ability to solve problems, as it is the being that governs knowledge. Mesprit, whose birth created emotions, allowing people to feel all from sorrow to joy, and finally Azelf, whose birth gave beings the power to do, giving them the power of willpower. From here, we get into a section of Pokemon lore that's lacking information, which is the births of the rest of the legendary Pokemon and just kind of Pokemon in general. There are two main theories about this era of progression. The first is that Arceus created a lot of the remaining legendaries to shape the world. Pokemon like Kyogre, Groudon, Regigigas, and others were created by Arceus as well as Mew, which became the progenitor of all regular Pokemon. However, this theory is contradicted by the Pokedex entries for Primal Groudon and Kyogre, as they state that the duo was formed from deep within the earth, which insinuates that they both just kind of formed of their own volition, not of Arceus's. The other theory is that the final Pokemon Arceus created was Mew, and then Mew evolved in a Darwinian manner into every other Pokemon over time as it needed to, or maybe just because it wanted to at times. This theory has some ground to stand on because Mew is considered the ancestor of all Pokemon, and it has the DNA of every Pokemon within it. It's also worth mentioning that a number of Pokedex entries imply that there are multiple Mew, and while they are exceedingly rare nowadays, that might not have always been the case, which kind of supports this theory, as it means that over time, Mews evolved into more and more varieties of Pokemon, depleting the population of Mews. It is also worth mentioning now that a lot of legendary Pokemon are not singular in the Pokemon universe, despite them being singular in pretty much every Pokemon game. This might even be the case for Arceus, as it's said they shaped the universe with their 1,000 arms, even though it has no arms, leading to the conclusion that each Arceus is just one of these arms. If anyone else has any theories about what happened in this time frame, please let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear them. For now though, we're going to be moving on to the shaping of Earth. After this, at some point Groudon and Kyogre formed deep deep within the earth and created the ocean and the land masses and immediately started beefing. This threw the surrounding areas into chaos, and it was then that Rayquaza appeared and got them to chill, sending them both into a slumber deep within their respective elements for a long, long time. Shortly after these events, Regigigas awoke and shaped the continents. His movements were likely what inadvertently created Heatran, as it was shifts in the earth that created the environment for it to form. Around the same time, Arceus conducted one last act, as they created the Adamant Crystal, Lustrous Orb, and Greasius Core before falling into a slumber in its own realm. And that's basically the Pokemon creation myth. As a myth, it is of course somewhat up to interpretation, but that's the general idea. So from here, I want to get into the specific lore that each region has. Let's get started with Kanto, which has two pieces of lore I want to cover. The first is the creation of Mewtwo. After discovering Mew in South America, the Pokemon was brought back to Kanto, where it gave birth. This new Pokemon was called Mewtwo, and it was subjected to vicious experimentation, specifically with...
I have to grab my water, but this is very interesting. So freaking thirsty. I'm so hungry. Party never ends.
its DNA, which was arranged and recombined over and over again to try and make the Pokemon as powerful as possible. Ultimately, this goal was achieved, and its battling abilities were raised to the ultimate level. But shortly after, Mewtwo escaped human containment with little effort and retreated to Cerulean Cave, where it stayed until the events of the main series. These experiments were likely conducted at the Cinnabar Laboratory, which can be deduced since these journals are found in the Cinnabar Manor, and the Cinnabar Laboratory was also the lab where Porygon was created, meaning it has plenty of experience with Pokemon experimentation. The brutal scientists that conducted these experiments were likely Mr. Fuji, as he was the founder of the lab back when he went by Dr. Fuji, and also Blaine, since he is obviously a seasoned scientist and there aren't really any other locations in Kanto or Johto that he could practice at. The other piece of lore is more of a fan theory than anything, but it is kind of insinuated that Kanto was once involved in a war of some sort. The only primary source of this information is Lieutenant Surge, who states that his electric-type Pokemon protected him during the war. But there's also a ton of circumstantial evidence that is spread throughout the region as well, like how there are relatively few middle-aged men in Kanto. They're all either old as hell or on the young side. Many people take this lack of men as evidence of a war that took place a number of years ago, which decimated the male population, or at least the part of the population that was eligible.
That would have to be
for
such a
enlistment.
devastating
It's
war.
not much evidence, but it's what we've got. We don't have any real information on who this war was fought with, but many fans seem to think it was some sort of civil war or war of annexation with Johto, because the two regions do have a lot in common, like sharing a Pokemon League. But personally, I think it was Unova, or some other United States-based region. I have one main reason for thinking this. Lieutenant Surge is referred to as an American by many people throughout the game, and I can't really imagine a reason Surge would be stationed in a war-ravaged Kanto unless it was some sort of occupation, but that's probably a little bit far-fetched. Get it? Anyway, let's move on to Johto. In Johto, there is one giant, obvious piece of lore.
I gotta
burning
rewatch the
of
series, dude.
Brass Tower. A number of years ago, the Brass Tower was struck by lightning, setting it on fire and burning it to the ground. Within were 3 Pokemon that became trapped in the blaze and died, before being resurrected by Ho-Oh as the 3 legendary beasts, Entei, Raikou, and Suicune. While it is widely speculated that the 3 Pokemon that died in this tower tower were Vaporeon, Jolteon, and Flareon, thanks to their shared typings and vague resemblances. This is never actually.
I only really watched it as a
In
kid,
the game, the people of Ekrutik
but
believe the beast
I know it's gonna be
changed
good when I
its water,
rewatch
fire,
it.
and electric types to resemble the storm that burnt down the tower, with Raikou representing the initial lightning strike, Entei representing the fire that burned down the tower, and Suicune representing the rain of the storm that ultimately put out the fire. Johto is also home to the oldest known language
have to be
in
a
the
raging
Pokemon
freaking storm to
universe,
put out
that
a
being
fire that
the
big.
unknown-inspired alphabet. Interestingly, it's not actually clear which came first in this case. While it might seem obvious that the unknown came first and that the humans copied their alphabet, we also see Pokemon evolve because of human action, such as the Clink and Roly-Poly evolution lines. So it could be that the unknown evolved around this language from humans. Despite being featured in multiple Pokemon games and being some of the oldest ruins in Pokemon, they're still mostly a mystery to us. We know some ancient civilization built them and left messages about the importance of Pokemon to whoever might study these ruins, but that's kind of it. And lastly, I should at least mention Celebi. Celebi is the mythical Pokemon that guards Ilex Forest in every time period. There isn't much other information on its role in Johto though, so I guess it's time that we return to Hoenn. We already covered a good bit of Hoenn's history during the creation myth part of this video, as a big part of what we know about Hoenn's history is just Groudon and Kyogre beefing a few times. But there is more to Hoenn than just those two bozos, as we have to talk about the Regis. Regigigas created the original 3 golems about 10,000 years prior to the events of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Those were, of course, Regirock, Regice, and Registeel. However, shortly after, all 4 of these golems were sealed away by humans who feared their power. About 2,000 years before Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, there was another beef session. At this time, the Earth was overflowing with natural energy, which made Groudon and Kyogre wake up and start rampaging as they do. Once again, Rayquaza shuts them up, and as a result, the Draconid people start worshipping it as the savior of their culture. We don't know exactly what caused the Earth to overflow with natural energy at this time, but there was a large and continuous meteor shower around the same time, so maybe that had something to do with it. Oh, and also Hoenn has been to the moon. This is one of those moments where the Pokemon world and our world overlap in a weird way, because in the Moss Deep Space Center, there is a guy who says he bought a color TV just to watch the moon landing, which happened on July 20th, 1969, the same exact day it happened in real life. Does this mean that people like Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin also exist in the Pokemon world? Does NASA exist? And if so, does that mean that the United States exist in the Pokemon world? We don't really know, but it's kind of crazy regardless. Hoenn has 2 mythical Pokemon, but unlike Mew and Celebi, neither Jirachi or Deoxys play a role in the region's lore. In Jirachi's case, that's because all it does is sleep for like 1,000 years at a time, and Deoxys isn't even from Earth, and as far as I can tell, the Delta episode is the very first time it is encountered in the Pokemon canon, which I know is a loose term, but still. So let's move on to the region that started it all, Sinnoh. Much like Hoenn, a lot of Sinnoh's lore is simply the creation myth, but that's not all of it. There are still some loose ends to tie up, like Regigigas.
Holy crap, wait, I have to pause this video. So add-ons broke this morning. Add-ons in Classic Era were fucked. But then I just hit escape and I realized that edit mode exists in the game now. This is awesome. Holy crap, I did not know that. It's only for a few things, but... No, it's not. It's for everything. Oh my god, this is so great. That is so awesome, dude. That is so great, dude. Yeah, but I don't think they added that to Classic Era, because I've been playing Classic Era and I haven't seen it yet. But wherever, I don't care. That's awesome. Amazing. Yeah, in which case, I just fully missed it. But that is so awesome, dude. Man. I love... It's just so good because it saves the format like it does in retail. Oh my god, this is so great, Blizzard. Thank you. So freaking good, dude. Okay. I'm going to be doing that on my other screen while we,
Gigas created the aforementioned golems of ice, steel, and rock.
God,
And
that's
around
so
the
great,
same
dude.
ish time, he also
Yes.
created Regieleki and Regidraco. These
I
two
don't like
were
those
made of
ones.
energy rather than physical materials like the original three. This is interesting to me because it makes you wonder just how strong Regigigas is. I mean, being able to create living things out of rock, steel, and ice is crazy enough as it is, but being able to manifest and shape the physical embodiments of energies is crazy. Evidently, the ancient people of the Pokemon world understood the strength Regigigas possessed, because shortly after forming the golems, it was sealed away in the Snow Point Temple. How they managed to seal it away at all, we don't know. But they also managed to seal away the other 5 golems, so it seemed they had some sort of methodology. About 9,000 years after the sealing of Regigigas, the people of Hisui, the precursor to Sinnoh, started worshipping Arceus under the name Almighty Sinnoh. The events of Legends Arceus are
So
a topic
fucking
I am
awesome, dude.
conflicted about covering, because they are technically both lore and the events of a main game. So I'm going to cover the lore of Legends Arceus that we haven't already covered and then move on. Let's start with the Ancient Hero. The Ancient Hero is a mysterious figure that befriends 10 Pokemon, those being the 10 regional variants from the game, and then collected all 18 plates scattered around the region in order to meet Arceus.
Great job, Liz.
Upon meeting Arceus, he bested the Pokemon in battle, earning its respect. Arceus then blessed the human and his Pokemon, and they became the protectors of Hisui, going as far as defeating Giratina and sending it back to the Distortion world. This dude is basically just a stand-in for the main protagonist in ancient times, but he is the reason we have the Ride and Noble Pokemon, so I thought he was at least worth mentioning. Another piece of mythology present in Hisui is that of the genies, specifically Enamorus and Landorus. These two arrived in Hisui slightly after a tough winter, and their presence blessed the lands of Hisui, which brought life and growable land to the region. There isn't really mention of Tornadus or Thunderous though, so
Cool.
we won't be
Thank
talking
you, buddy.
about them
Thank you
now.
for stopping by. I'll be
Lastly,
around,
at some point in history,
just
the
here for
Diamond
a
and
few more
Pearl
hours.
clans crossed the ocean and settled
This
in
is day
Hisui
3 of 30.
before beefing over whether the Almighty
I stream
Sinnoh
every
was
day,
Dialga or
something.
Palkia, even though it was
And like I
neither.
said, I'm
Yeah,
just,
classic Pokemon
boosting
plotline
in
right there.
WoW
Unova,
Classic, so it's
from
not super
Unova
exciting to watch,
onward,
but I'm
is
just
where
gonna
the
watch
lore
YouTube.
starts to get pretty weird, as each region starts to have more specialized lore rather than general lore like Gens 1, 3, and 4. One of my favorite examples of this is that Conkeldurr taught humans how to make concrete about 2,000 years ago. This might not sound insane, but it kind of is. See, in the real world, the invention of reinforced concrete was one of the largest catalysts for the Industrial Revolution. It allowed people to build bigger and faster and completely changed the way we build to this day. So the fact that this dude likely played a role in creating the Pokemon world we see today on a scale comparable to some legendary Pokemon is insane to me. Another big part of the lore of Unova is of course the original dragon that created the Tau Trio. Long before the events of Black and White, Unova was created by 2 brothers who united the people of the land using a single dragon Pokemon. This led to
Dude, that
both
thing
of them
looks sick.
becoming kings of the region, but their peace and cooperation wouldn't last too long, as they began to argue over their beliefs. The older brother cared most about truth, and the younger brother cared most about ideals. This disagreement led to the single dragon Pokemon splitting into Reshiram, who sided with the older brother, and Zekrom, who sided with the younger. The brothers then fought, but neither dragon could come out victorious, so they agreed that there was no correct side between truth and ideals. At some point after this, Dragon Spiral Tower was built, and it seems the DNA splicers were created around this time as well. The tower would then hold Reshiram or Zekrom, depending on the game that you're playing, until the events of the main story. Then there's Kyurem. Kyurem is a bit weird because there is conflicting information on its origin. Many people believe that Kyurem is essentially the leftovers of the original dragon, which is why it confused with Zekrom and Reshiram. And while this is a valid theory, there's also an old legend in Lakusona Town that states the dragon came to Earth in an icy meteor, meaning it's not related to the original dragon at all. Personally, I like to think it's the leftovers of the original dragon because it just makes more sense in my mind, but both opinions are valid. Unova is also kind of unique because it has two sub-legendary trios. There's the Genies and the Swords of Justice. To me, the Swords of Justice are the more interesting trio, so we're gonna cover them first. The Swords of Justice appear whenever Pokemon seem to be threatened by human expansion. Virizion protects them from threats, Terrakion creates a safe path for the Pokemon, and Cobalion leads them to safety. During one of these rescue missions, they found Keldeo in the ashes of a forest, and they took it into their ranks. It then grew quickly, surpassing the Swords of Justice, and then disappeared. Its reasons for disappearing are not known to us yet. Additionally, these three went as far as fighting against humans to protect innocent Pokemon, even fending them off a number of times, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. It's also pretty telling that these three are present in Unova considering its rapid urbanization. They are definitely not treating the wildlife all that well. And that brings us to the Genies, everybody's favorite legendary trio that definitely did not bend competitive Pokemon around them. The most infamous of the Genies was undoubtedly Landorus, who also seems to be the most important in lore. A legend states that long ago, Landorus punished Thundurus and Tornadus for decimating the land around the Abundant Shrine with harsh storm conditions. Apparently, Thundurus and Tornadus have had a fierce rivalry that has existed for hundreds of years, with Landorus having to quell these conflicts time and time again. Landorus later traveled to Hisui with Enamorus, as we covered earlier. Interestingly, all the Genies have two forms, the Incarnate and Therian forms. The Therian forms are used when the Pokemon travel between regions, and the Incarnate ones are for when they are staying in a region. And now we move in to Kalos. Kalos is, unfortunately, one of the regions we know the least about, because at the time of recording, there are only 2 games set there, with a third on its way. This means its lore is fairly thin, but it does still have one of the coolest pieces of lore around in the Ultimate Weapon. The Ultimate Weapon was a weapon of mass destruction, capable of generating infinite energy and discharging it. It was originally built by AZ after his beloved Floette died in a war, as he wanted a way to bring it back to life. While the weapon did succeed in bringing his Floette back to life, it also came at the cost of the lives of many Pokemon, and accidentally made AZ and Floette immortal. This wasn't the end of the weapon's usage though, as AZ sought revenge on those that killed Floette in the first place. So he activated the weapon a second time, this time using it to destroy both sides of the war. While this did bring peace to Kalos, AZ's struggles were not over. His Floette eventually learned that over 60 Pokemon were sacrificed to bring it back to life. Horrified by this massacre, it abandoned AZ, and AZ then left Kalos to search for it, wandering aimlessly. During his absence, the weapon was buried deep underground by AZ's brother to prevent it from being used again, even though it can't be activated without a key that AZ has. So with him wandering the world, it wouldn't be able to be activated even if it was found. That is, until his return in X and Y. The Ultimate Weapon might be the origin of the Mega Stones, as theorized by Professor Sycamore, who believes the blast from the weapon irradiated evolution stones, transforming them. What's kind of crazy about the Ultimate Weapon is that it was likely made pre-industrialization, as we established in the Unova section. The progress of the world of Pokemon is undoubtedly pretty different from that of our own, despite how similar the worlds end up being. I know it's a kid's video game and this kind of stuff probably isn't taken into account, but still. Next is Alola. This is another region with some pretty wacky lore. It all starts a few hundred years before the events of the main games, when Necrozma stole the light from Ultra Megalopolis. Crazy name for a city, by the way. The citizens that lived there tried to fight Necrozma to recover the stolen light, and in the battle, they injured the Pokemon, which caused pieces of its body to rain down on different worlds. This includes Alola, which is how Z crystals were formed. Later, Solgaleo or Lunala came to Alola through an Ultra wormhole. The Tapu Quartet, the guardians of Alola, saw these two powerful Pokemon as potential threats and engaged in battle with them, but were ultimately defeated. Solgaleo or Lunala then offered the Tapus Tapunium Z as a reward for their efforts. Afterwards, the other legendary Pokemon would appear, and they would create a new Cosmog together. Then they would leave the new Pokemon in the care of the Tapus. At a later point in time, Necrozma came through the wormhole itself and stole the light of the region, before getting a hold of Solgaleo or Lunala and turning them into their Duskmane or Dawnwing forms. This sparked another conflict where the Alolan royalty requested the Tapus battle Necrozma. They were able to defeat it and restore the region's light, with the help of a young trainer using Z powers. This ordeal created the island challenge that Alola became known for, and later the Alolan royalty ordered the burning of all books related to Necrozma for some reason. Many years after this, a scientist built Magearna, and many years after that, the Aether Foundation was formed. They studied Ultra Beasts, and during their research rediscovered Ultra Wormholes, Cosmog, Kilowog and Nihilego. However, the founder of the Foundation, Mon, would disappear during a mission where they attempted to connect to a Ultra wormhole, leaving behind just a weakened Cosmog. His disappearance left Lusamine in charge of the Aether Foundation and mentally unstable. The Foundation would then start research on the Beast Killer project and would create Pokemon known as Type Full, which was based on Arceus, literally trying to recreate God. The experiments were not successful though, as the Type Full Pokemon rejected the Arceus system, manufactured by the Arceus Laboratories in Galar. As such, they were given control masks and renamed Type Null before being cryogenically frozen. Interestingly, Mon does return to Alola at some point later and starts running Pokemon Pelago, although all his memories have been erased by whatever ordeal he went through. This is the region that kind of made me realize just how many forces of evil in Pokemon want to control a god to accomplish their goals. I wonder if there's a reason this is such a repetitive theme. Nah, probably not. Anyway, let's move in to the land of Galar. Galar has a lot less lore than any of the preceding regions. Basically, 20,000 years ago, a meteorite with Eternatus in it fell in Galar. Then, 3,000 years prior to the events of Sword and Shield, Eternatus awoke and created a black storm that covered all of Galar. This day would be known as the darkest day in Galar's history. It was ultimately stopped by two boys with Zacian and Zamazenta. When Eternatus was destroyed, it shattered and pieces of it flew off across the region, creating the resources for Dynamax bands. At a later date, Calyrex was found injured in the Crown Tundra. It was taken in by humans as they cared for it until it fully recovered. As thanks for this action, Calyrex turned the fields of the tundra into lands that could grow crops, and was then worshipped as the king of bountiful harvests. Later, Calyrex saved his people from Glastrier or Spectrier and forced the beast to become its steed. But much like the story of Zacian and Zamazenta, Calyrex was slowly forgotten over time, resulting in it losing its power, and even its horse would abandon it. As far as I can tell, that's pretty much all the lore we have for Galar. One aspect of Galar's lore that I found interesting though was the timeline of Eternatus' awakening. It awoke 3,000 years prior to the main story, which was about the same time the ultimate weapon was used in Kalos. According to Eternatus' Pokedex entry, it absorbs energy from Galar to stay alive, so it could be possible that the enormous energy generated and released from the ultimate weapon was the cause for Eternatus' awakening as well. That's just speculation though. And finally is Paldea. And let me tell you, this region has some old lore, stretching back about 2 million years, which was when the Area Zero underdepths were formed by earthquakes. It was also around this time that Terapagos got trapped underground as a result of the seismic activity, causing the species to largely go extinct. It would be another million years before anything else notable happened in the region though, as that is when the crater that would become Area Zero would form. As far as I can tell, we still don't know what formed this crater. It could have been more natural seismic activity, or it could have been a meteor. We do know, however, that it was not the ultimate weapon of Kalos, as that would not be created for another 997,000 years, and as we stated earlier, the weapon landed in Kalos, not Paldea. About 2,000 years before the story of Scarlet and Violet, the Great Paldean Empire rose to power and ruled Paldea. They declared a great age of exploration by sending exploration parties into Area Zero in search of treasure. Some of these expeditions claimed to see a planet floating in space in Area Zero, which was the stellar form of Terapagos. But these expeditions would lead to the Empire's downfall, as after 1,000 years of failed expeditions, the Empire fell into decline. At some point during the Empire's reign, a merchant from the Far East gave the king 4 treasures: a vessel, a broken sword, a set of wood tablets, and a set of beads. These were, of course, the Treasures of Ruin quartets, which earned their name after they went on rampages as a result of the king's greed. Ultimately, the Pokemon were sealed away in shrines by strong Pokemon trainers. 800 years prior to the main events of the story, the Academy Central to Scarlet and Violet was founded, and the Paldea region unified with a few of its neighboring countries to become the Paldea region we know. Sometime after that, an exploration team claimed to be the first people to reach the bottom of Area Zero. One of these members was Heath, who wrote the Scarlet or Violet book depending on which game you're playing. He and his team then planted Herba Mystica around Paldea in an attempt to get it to grow agriculturally. However, this led to the creation of the Titan Pokemon we fight in-game, so they gave up on the effort. About 60 years before the main story, the first terrestrialized Pokemon appeared in Area Zero, and later the Pokemon professors discovered that the energy emanating from the crystals in Area Zero, which was being produced by Terapagos, was the cause of terrestrialization. The professor then invented the Terra Or orb and shared it with others around the region. And finally, just 1 year before the events of Scarlet and Violet, the Pokemon professors created a time machine, which they used to accidentally bring 2 Koraidon or Miraidon into the modern age, which ended up killing the professor and releasing Paradox Pokemon into Area 0. And that's all of it, I think. I know there are a few legendary Pokemon I didn't cover, but that's because they either don't contribute to the lore of the region or we have no idea how they actually came to be, so I didn't feel they were necessary to include in the video. If you want me to talk about more of the legendary Pokemon, let me know in the comments down below. I would not mind making another video on them. That's it for this video though, so thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you've made it all the way to the end. You obviously like the content, and it would really mean a lot to me. I'll be back with another video in the next couple of weeks, so I'll see you then.
What else do we got on?
Known primarily for their insanely legendary Pokemon are some of the most important Pokemon in each game, but at this point, there are so many that it can be hard to remember the important details for each one, like their lore, inspiration, and more. Well, worry not, as that is exactly what we're covering here today, as we explain every legendary Pokemon. We'll be going in Pokedex order, with a few exceptions for legendaries that were introduced at different times than the rest of their groups, such as Enamorus. Let's get started with the legendary birds. These guys were the OG legendaries, and I think their designs have aged pretty well overall, even if their usefulness in battle kind of hasn't. The first of these 3 entities is Articuno. Being such an old legendary, the dex entries for this Pokemon have changed quite a bit over the years, but the common consensus seems to be that Articuno has the ability to cool the air around it, turning it into snow and summoning blizzards. It is said that Articuno's wings are made of ice themselves, which might explain how it cools the air. Articuno also apparently appears to doomed hikers on mountains, which is pretty bleak. But I mean, if I was stranded on a mountain about to die, seeing this magnificent beast would at least be a silver lining. Articuno also has a Galarian form, as do all the other legendary birds, but because it was introduced so recently, we don't have nearly as much information on it. It apparently still has the ability to freeze things via its freezing glare, and it supposedly keeps itself afloat with its psychic powers despite still being a flying type. The second member of the legendary birds is the likely fan favorite, Zapdos. Inspired primarily by the Thunderbird, Zapdos lives in thunderclouds, and it has the ability to control electricity. It is most commonly seen when thunderclouds split in half. Interestingly, its Pokemon Stadium Dex entry claims it can actually summon thunderstorms by flapping its wings, but most other Dex entries say it simply lives in them. Its Galarian form is flying fighting rather than flying electric, and in this form, it mostly just wants to throw hands. It is far more muscular than Cantonian Zapdos despite being smaller, and its legs are also a lot stronger, as they're able to deliver kicks that can destroy dump trucks. This form, I believe, is inspired by the Roadrunner. And the final member of the trio is Moltres, which is a flying fire type. The most obvious inspiration for Moltres is, of course, the Phoenix, although it does get overshadowed by Ho-Oh in that department, and frankly, pretty much every other department. Sorry, Moltres. A lot of Moltres' early dex entries mention that it has the ability to dip its body into lava if it needs to heal, which really emphasizes the molten part of its name, but this idea seems to have been replaced by the idea that it brings spring in later dex entries. In fact, all 3 of the legendary birds are supposed to represent the coming of a new season, with Zapdos representing summer and the thunderstorms characteristic of summer, and Articuno obviously representing the winter. Autumn is not outright represented, which just makes it all the more interesting just how connected Autumn is to Ho-Oh. And before you leave that comment, no, there is no connection between the legendary birds and Lugia like there was in the Pokemon 2000 movie. That was purely a construct of the movie, but we'll be talking more about Lugia's weird history in its designated slot. Galarian Moltres seems to just be Moltres, but evil. Its flames are sinister, and its victims become burned out shadows shadows of themselves. I wonder where that idea came from. The last thing I should mention about the legendary birds is that their names are all partially constructed of Spanish numbers. Arctic Uno, Zapdos, Moltres. I'm sure you already knew this, but in case you didn't, there you go. Now it's time to talk about Mewtwo. Mewtwo is a human-made Pokemon that was created to push the bounds of genetic engineering and create the strongest Pokemon humanly possible. In this, the scientists who created Mewtwo, likely Dr. Fuji and Blaine, were successful. They rearranged the DNA gathered from the Pokemon Mew, engineering it to try and increase the strength of their creations. As Mewtwo became stronger though, it lost empathy and started to focus solely on battle. Eventually, Mewtwo escaped the facility it was kept in on Cinnabar Island and fled to Cerulean Cave, where it now rests. While it is implied by the games that only one Mewtwo was created, both the anime and manga now imply that there are multiple. Regardless of how many there are, Mewtwo stands among the most popular Pokemon even to this day, in large part because it was just such a good character in the first Pokemon movie. And the final Kanto legendary is Mew. Mew technically isn't a legendary, but a mythical Pokemon. But guess what? We're talking about the mythicals in this video too. That's right, we're not leaving any legendaries behind. Well, maybe Phione. Anyway, when it was originally introduced, Mew was the first Pokemon. It is believed to be the common ancestor of all Pokemon, as the genetic code for all Pokemon exists within its DNA. This is what gives Mew the ability to learn so many moves, and is also the reason it is one of the few Pokemon that can learn Transform. It was originally discovered by Mr. Fuji in South America, who then took it back to the Kanto region to experiment on it, as we already stated. There's a popular fan theory that the Pokemon Ditto is actually a byproduct of failed experiments on Mew, as the two Pokemon have a high number of shared stats, like being the same weight, having identical spray and shiny colors, and being able to learn Transform, which is an extraordinarily rare move otherwise. Another interesting tidbit about Mew is that apparently not even Nintendo knew it was in the game when Red and Green originally came out, as Shigeki Morimoto added it after the debugging process was done just 2 weeks before the game's released. It is wild that a Pokemon as iconic and important as Mew almost didn't make it into the original games, but that does also explain why it was absent from a lot of promotional material like the Pokerap. Now though, it's time to move to Johto, which actually has some pretty cool legendary Pokemon. That's not to say Kanto's legendaries aren't cool, but I feel like a lot of people sleep on Johto when it comes to legendaries for whatever reason. Let's start with the legendary beasts. These three beasts have some of the most memorable lore in Pokemon. One night, the Brass Tower was set ablaze by a thunderstorm and burned to the ground. Trapped inside were 3 Pokemon, all of whom ended up perishing in the fire. However, after the fire subsided, Ho-Oh appeared and not only resurrected them, but also turned them into the legendary Pokemon Suicune, Raikou, and Entei. It's a simple but very mythological story, and it's some of my favorite lore in Pokemon. But there's more to say about these beasts than just what made them legendary. At least that's the case for Entei and Suicune. Raikou kind of got the short end of the stick, and you'll soon understand why I say that. Raikou is the electric type member of the legendary beasts, and it is supposed to represent the lightning that set the tower on fire. The rain cloud it carries on its back can release thunderbolts at will, and its roar sends shockwaves through the air and sounds of thunder. It seems to be inspired by a Raijin, a Japanese god of lightning, but could also be inspired by the Nue. Apparently, Raikou went through a lot of different tiger-based design concepts over the course of its creation, which could be why it seems so much less prevalent outside of the games when compared to Entei and Suicune. Entei is said to represent the fire that burned the tower down, and while the one we know from Gold and Silver was created through resurrection, apparently they can also be born from volcanic eruptions too, according to their dex entries. The Pokedex also says Entei embodies the passion of magma and that volcanoes erupt when it barks, which is a very interesting reproductive cycle. Like, if an Entei gets pissed at another Pokemon and barks up a storm, will that just birth a bunch of Entei via volcanic eruptions? If that were the case, I feel like there'd be way more of them, you know? Anyway, much like Raikou, Entei seems to be inspired by a big cat as well. This time, a lion. From a mythological perspective, it was likely also inspired by the lion dogs of China. Entei was also featured as the main antagonist of the third Pokemon movie, Spell of the Unknown, although technically this wasn't a real Entei, just an illusion created by the Unknown. And finally, we have the fan favorite, or at least the Pokemon Company's favorite, Suicune. Suicune represents the rain that put out the fire that burnt down the Brass Tower, and it is said to be the reincarnation of the Northern Winds. It runs gracefully across the lands, and has the ability to purify water instantly, and was apparently popular enough to become the mascot of Pokemon Crystal, which is pretty cool, since it's the only time a member of a lesser legendary trio has appeared as a mascot. In Crystal, Suicune makes periodic appearances throughout your journey across Johto, and almost seems to be watching or following you to some extent before you catch it in the Tin Tower. Interestingly, the routes and locations it appears are different in the remakes, as it travels around Kanto quite a bit as well in those games.
Is that Heart
Suicune
Gold?
also
Yeah,
played
dude,
a
I like
large
that one
role in
because
the
that's where your
fourth
buddy
Pokemon
followed you
movie,
around.
along with Celebi,
It's
who
so
we'll talk
awesome.
about in a little bit. So with Entei getting its own movie and Suicune getting its own game and having a major role in a movie, hopefully you understand why I say Raikou got the short end of the stick. Maybe that's why they decided to make Raging Bolt such a monster of a Pokemon. All three of the legendary beasts actually
Raging
got
Bolt,
past
excuse
Paradox
me.
forms in Scarlet and Violet, with Entei's being Gouging Fire and Suicune's being Walking Wake. But we don't have much information on these three on account of them being so brand new. All three of their Pokedex entries have emphases on just how strong and ruthless they are, which makes sense as they are all based on different kinds of dinosaurs. But enough of that legendary trio,
Yeah, that,
let's move on to Lugia.
Waterway
Lugia
Kadabra
is one of the
pretty sick.
most fascinating Pokemon to me, because it was never supposed to exist. Okay, let me explain. Lugia was originally designed for the second Pokemon movie rather than Gold and Silver. Originally, Ho-Oh was supposed to be the sole legendary of the Johto region, but Lugia was added at a later date, as we can see in the 1999 demo. The original designer of Lugia, Takeshi Shudo, saw the Pokemon as a maternal figure and wrote them to be the creator of all life on Earth. But this was later changed by another party, and the Pokemon was made the guardian of the sea instead, and given a more male representation with a male voice in the movie, which the original creator disagreed with and regretted. While we're talking about Pokemon the movie 2000, I want to reiterate that Lugia has no actual connection to the legendary birds in lore, despite it being portrayed that way in the film. So if you didn't know that, sorry to burst your bubble. Lugia's Dex entries corroborate it being the guardian of the sea, but also put a huge emphasis on just how strong its wings are, stating that just one flap can cause a storm that lasts 40 days, and even a light flutter of its wings can destroy houses. However, unlike a different sea-based deity, Lugia does not want to be destructive, so instead it sleeps deep underwater. Lugia also got a fairly cool redesign in Pokemon XD Gales of Darkness, where it became Shadow Lugia, the ultimate shadow Pokemon. This form is exclusive to this game though, and it is impossible to transfer it out without first purifying it. Next is Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh is undoubtedly one of the most important Pokemon to the early days of the franchise. Not only did it appear in the very first episode of the Pokemon anime, but as we established earlier, it is also central to the creation of the legendary beasts, and at one point in development might have even held a connection to the legendary birds, as it seems to be closely related to Autumn, which is the one season that is missing from their pattern. Ho-Oh is said to constantly fly around the world on its magnificent wings, granting any who see it eternal happiness and good fortune. It also, obviously, has the ability to bring beings back from the dead, although we don't know exactly how this works. It's likely that the item Sacred Ash is involved, as Sacred Ash is an item that is held by Ho-Oh that can revive up to 5 Pokemon at a time in-game, but this item does not make new legendary Pokemon like Ho-Oh did in that moment. Regardless, the inspiration for Ho-Oh could not be more obvious. It's the Phoenix, more specifically Feng Wang in the Huma. The Huma specifically is seen as a symbol of good fortune, which matches up pretty well with Ho-Oh's Dex entry. And the final legendary Pokemon of the Johto region is everybody's favorite time-traveling onion fairy, Celebi. Celebi was the first Pokemon able to time travel, excluding fossils if you want to count that as time travel, which I guess it kind of is, but I digress. It is said that Celebi wanders across time, causing grass and flowers to flourish when it appears. However, it only appears in times of peace. Its Pokédex entry says that it protects the forest, which I think is implied to mean Ilex, but since the Gen 2 games, we have seen it appear periodically in other forests as well. So there's a good chance that the forest it refers to is dependent on the region that it is in. Celebi also plays a huge role in the 4th Pokemon movie, Celebi, the Voice of the Forest. And it is also tied to the infamous GS Ball plotline of the anime, as it was originally supposed to be contained within the GS Ball before the whole arc was thrown out and the GS Ball with it. And now we move to one of my personal favorite regions, the Hoenn region. Hoenn was the first region I ever played, and as such it holds a special place in my heart. In my opinion, it has some of the coolest legendary designs, with many of them inspiring a feeling of awe or wonder in a way that not a ton of legendaries do. We'll be starting with the legendary golems, or giants, or Regis. The golems are interesting because they're one of the few groups of legendaries that has expanded over time, with new members being added on 2 separate occasions. For now though, we're just gonna stay focused on the OG3, Regirock, Regice, and Registeel. Aside from the funny noises these guys make in the movies, this trio is known primarily for their insanely cryptic and overly complicated methods of obtaining, as you have to decode like 4 different Braille messages to get each one. It's the type of stuff your friend would tell you on a playground in order to obtain Mew 3, except it's actually in the games. It's wild. In order to unlock Regirock, the player must move either to the right or left 2 tiles, depending on the game, then move down 2 tiles, and then use Strength. Regirock is, in my opinion, the most recognizable of the original trio. According to its dex entries, it was sealed away by people long ago, and it has the ability to repair itself in battle just by picking up rocks that are around it. This kind of makes me wish it had an ability like Ice Body or Rain Dish, but for sand, as that would fit its lore very well. But instead, it just gets pressure or sturdy. Another one of its dex entries says that the rocks that make up its body come from all across the world, which is kind of interesting when we add the context of its previous dex entry, because together they kind of imply that prior to its imprisonment, the golem kind of just wandered the earth. Next in the trio is Regice. Regice's defining feature is that it is really, really cold, like negative 328 degrees Fahrenheit, or negative 200 degrees Celsius for all you metric people out there. Its body originally formed way back during the Ice Age, meaning it is at least 11,000 years old, and it is apparently formed out of Antarctic ice. It also cannot be melted by pretty much anything, even magma, so there's definitely some supernatural properties in this golem as well, which I guess makes sense. The puzzle to unlock Regice's chamber differs quite a bit depending on the game. In the original Ruby and Sapphire, as well as the remakes, you have to stand outside the door and wait for 2 minutes for it to open. This does still work if the game's internal battery has dried up, in case you're wondering, as it's based on a recorded in-game time and not the battery timer. In Emerald, you just have to run 1 lap around the room while sticking right next to the wall. I'm not entirely sure why they decided to change this for Emerald, but I kind of like the new updated version more. Waiting 2 minutes is just kind of anxiety inducing. How do I know if I've waited long enough? Will the door automatically open, or do I have to go press on, oh, there it goes. And finally, we have Registeel. Registeel seems to be the most mysterious of the 3 golems. Its body is composed of a metal that is harder than any known metal, yet somehow it shrinks and stretches with flexibility. Apparently, it was hardened underground by extremely high pressures for tens of thousands of years, meaning it is likely the oldest of the Regis aside from Regigigas. There's a strong possibility the metal actually came to Earth via a meteorite, as its dex entry for Sapphire says the metal is not of this world. While it might sound like a contradiction to say the metal spent tens of thousands of years being tempered underground but also came from space, it is technically possible, just super unlikely. All 3 of the golems were imprisoned by people long ago, but the exact methods are not known to us. Personally, I'd love to see a Legends Hoenn game centered around these sealing events, but I know that's not exactly likely considering this trio is not really the most popular and we already got Hoenn remakes. But we have to to move on from the Regis for now, as we have to cover the Lati duo. Latios and Latios are two of the most deeply connected legendary Pokemon ever made, to the point that even their Mega Evolutions are similar color-wise. They also share a typing of Dragon and Psychic, and have identical stat spreads with their attacking and defensive stats swapped. They even share an exclusive item in the Soul Dew, which I think is the only time an item like this has two exclusive users. Latias is the first of these two in the Pokedex and was originally introduced in Sapphire. According to its dex entries, it is extremely intelligent and sensitive to people's emotions. When hostile people or Pokemon come near it, Latias can use the down on its body to become invisible by controlling how it refracts light. Latios, on the other hand, can transmit images into the heads of foes telepathically and is also intelligent enough to understand human speech. The most memorable aspect of Latios, though, is probably the fact that it can apparently outspeed jet planes when it folds its wings. As for inspiration, it's pretty opaque for these two. One of the more clear inspirations is Eos, the Greek goddess of dawn, as Latios has a similar name, and there's also a blue parrot genus known as the Eos genus, which would match Latios's blue coloring. The duo is also known as the Aeon duo, which could be a reference to the Aeons of Gnostic religions, but I do not know nearly enough about religion to talk about that, so let's just move on to the Weather Trio. But first, please consider subscribing. If you want more Pokemon content, this is the channel to subscribe to. I have so many cool and unique videos coming in the next few months, and I promise you're not going to want to miss them. Plus, subscribing is just one of the best ways that you can help the channel aside from watching videos, so I would really appreciate if you would subscribe. Anyway, the Weather Trio are, arguably, some of the most recognizable and beloved legendary Pokemon. All the members of this trio are so well designed and have kept their relevance in both competitive and casual spheres of Pokemon since their inception. As the name implies, the Weather Trio focuses on weather conditions that can occur in Pokemon battles, specifically rain and sun for Kyogre
I think I got
and
some room
Groudon
today.
respectively, and the neutralization of weather for Rayquaza. These three are also known as the Super Ancient Trio, thanks to them being super powerful and super old. Kyogre is the first of these three, and it is a water type. According to its dex entries, Kyogre expands the sea when it appears via torrential rainfall, and when it's not beefing with Groudon or destroying the world, it sleeps deep in undersea trenches. Kyogre seems to be vaguely inspired by the Leviathan of Hebrew mythology, as the sea-based monster would battle Behemoth, a land-based monster, and they would fight until the end of time, which is pretty much exactly what Kyogre and Groudon do. Kyogre also draws some inspiration from the Greek symbol for alpha and its markings, which are even more greatly emphasized in its primal reversion. Both Kyogre and Groudon were given primal reversions in the Hoenn remakes, which returns them to their original, stronger states. These states cannot be manifested in the modern era due to the lack of primal energy available for transformation, so these two need to hold either the red or blue orb respectively in order to reach their full power. Primal Kyogre does not have too many differences from base Kyogre, aside from being bigger and having an upgraded ability in Primordial Sea. This ability is almost identical to regular Rain, except it causes all damaging fire-type moves to fail, cannot be replaced by normal weather conditions, and will remain in effect as long as Kyogre is on the field. Groudon, even in its base form, is pretty much the exact opposite of Kyogre. It expands land masses when it appears due to the intense heat and droughts it creates, and sleeps within pools of magma when it rests. As we already stated with Kyogre, Groudon seems to be loosely based on Behemoth, or at least the myth containing its conflict with Leviathan. It also has markings on its body resembling a Greek letter, this one being Omega, which is once again more pronounced in its primal form. Primal Groudon comes with the unique ability Desolate Land, which is pretty much the same as Primordial Sea but for the sun, meaning that damaging water type moves do not function while this weather condition is up, which is pretty good considering Primal Groudon gets a secondary typing of fire, giving it a 4 times weakness to its biggest op. One interesting tidbit about Groudon and Kyogre is that in the original Ruby and Sapphire, the dex entries of the games the legendaries weren't in spoke of them positively. Groudon's entry for Sapphire states that it was a savior to people who were suffering from terrible floods, and Kyogre's dex entry and Ruby says that it saved people who were suffering from droughts. Of course, their Emerald and ORAS Dex entries were not nearly as complimentary. Maybe Rayquaza slapped some sense into the writers of the Pokedex, because I get the feeling that no one knows these two better than the Green Noodle. Rayquaza has long been a super fan favorite thanks to its all-around cool design and undeniably sick shiny. Don't get me wrong, there are plenty of legendaries with cool shinies, but not many work as well as this black and red color scheme. Rayquaza is basically that friend that breaks up the fight when it comes to Groudon and Kyogre. It is said to live primarily in the ozone layer and has lived up there for hundreds of millions of years. This thing has been vibing in the outer atmosphere since there was an outer atmosphere. It seems the only reason it ever really comes down from the sky is to calm Groudon and Kyogre, and it does a very good job of that, as it is able to quell their rage with literally one cry. Like, it doesn't even have to throw hands or anything, it just has to be there. Rayquaza seems to be inspired by a mix of different dragons and birds from mythologies around the world. Its most direct inspiration is Quetzalcoatl, but it could also be inspired by the Ziz or the Lindworm. There's likely also a bit of inspiration from Japanese dragons as well, since it has 3 claws per hand, which is common among Japanese dragons. Then there's Mega Rayquaza. Mega Rayquaza is, as far as we know, the first Pokemon to ever Mega Evolve, doing so by channeling humanity's wish for salvation through the keystone of the leader of the Draconid people. The reason I say as far as we know is because the origins of Mega Evolution seem to shift with every game that involves Mega Evolution. First it was the Ultimate Weapon, then it was Mega Rayquaza, and now it might be related to Zygarde 2 in some way, so it's a bit hard to say what the truth actually is in this case. Regardless, it is still an incredibly strong Pokemon, and because of its method of Mega Evolution, it is the only Mega at this time that does not need to hold a Mega Stone to Mega Evolve, which is just broken on so many levels. It also gains a new ability as well, known as Delta Stream, which essentially removes the weaknesses of flying-type Pokemon and overwrites any normal weather effects that appear on the field. Lastly, for Hoenn, we have 2 mythical Pokemon to talk about. First up is the Wishmaker Jirachi. Jirachi is very simple compared to the Weather Trio and the Pokemon that follow it. It basically wakes up once every 1,000 years to grant a wish, and then goes back to sleep. Its main inspiration seems to be the concept of wishing upon a star, as well as the star festival Tanabata. Interestingly, Jirachi does have a signature move in Doom Desire, which is a really dark move name for an otherwise cute Pokemon. And finally, the last legendary of Hoenn, Deoxys. Deoxys is an extraterrestrial Pokemon that formed after an alien virus mutated into a Pokemon. Depending on the Dex entry, the cause of this mutation is different. Diamond and Pearl say the mutation happened after it fell to Earth, while others say it happened after exposure to a laser beam. Regardless of its origin, this Pokemon is really known for one thing: its forms, as Deoxys was one of the first Pokemon to ever sport more than 2 highly different forms. Deoxys has 4: Normal, Attack, Defense, and Speed. Each one, aside from Normal, provides a huge boost to each of its respective stats. Although at this point, these forms seem to be getting power crept, which is kind of insane. Interestingly, in Gen 3, each form has a different Pokedex entry due to the different forms only appearing in their designated games. Starting in Sinnoh though, the forms were changed by clicking on a meteorite, which greatly improved the Pokemon's flexibility. For whatever reason, Deoxys and Rayquaza seem to have another unending beef. While this is likely because Rayquaza sees Deoxys as a threat to its home of the ozone layer, it is kind of funny just how many Pokemon Rayquaza seems to have an issue with. It's like the strict babysitter left to look after Earth while Arceus is out for a pack of cigs. Deoxys is obviously based on DNA and the double helix, but it is also likely based on viruses as well, due to their propensity to mutate and change rapidly, much like Deoxys's forms. Overall, it is a very cool Pokemon, and is among my favorite mythicals. Now though, we're moving into the Sinnoh region, which has a lot of legendaries, and I really like a lot of them. Unfortunately, our first Sinnoh legendary is not one of them. It's Yuxi. Look, I don't hate Yuxi, I just don't like it either. It's just kinda meh to me. Yuxi is known as the being of knowledge, and when it first flew, it gave people the ability to solve problems. It also has the ability to steal memories from those who see it or those who do evil. The inspiration for Yuxi are a bit harder to nail down though, as are the Lake Trios in general. They seem to be a mishmash of inspiration that is hard to decipher. Bulbapedia says the trio could be related to the high orders of angels, with Yuxi representing Cherubim, the 3 sacred treasures of Japan, with
I legit can't tell if this is AI or not. It's like a 4DX where they're bouncing the fuck around. There's no way. That is so funny, dude. Oh my god. They put like go see blah 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 in 4DX and people are like shaking around during the ship scenes, dude. Oh my god, that's craziness. Yeah, it's awesome. Okay, back to the show. Back to the show.
Yuxi representing
I just got
Yamato
distracted.
Kagami, or
Sometimes.
a trio of
What the
Greek
hell?
gods with Yuxi
Okay, let's get it poppin',
representing
man. I don't got
Hestia.
time to
All
wait for
three
these
of have
motherfuckers to
some
go.
connection to knowledge, which is why it's suggested that they are connected to Yuxi. Regardless, there is one very clear inspiration for Yuxi, and that is pixies. Yuxi, pixie, I'm sure you see the connection. Next is Mesprit. Mesprit is the being of emotion, and when it flew for the first time, people learned the joy and sadness of living, and it has the ability to disrupt the emotions of opponents as well. But what Mesprit is probably best remembered for is being a roaming legendary for some reason, as if Sinnoh didn't already have enough of those. Mesprit is of course inspired by spirits and sprites, but it could also be inspired by Seraphim, Demeter, and Yasakami no Magatama, as these three all have a strong connection with emotion. And finally is Azalf. Azalf is the being of willpower. When it first flew, people gained determination, and according to Legends Arceus, it even has the ability to control the willpower willpower of its adversaries. As for its inspirations, they're likely Hera from Greek mythology, Thrones from Christianity, and the sacred treasure Kusanagi, as all three of these have a somewhat notable connection to willpower. But its most direct inspiration, much like the other two, comes from its name, gnomes. You thought I was gonna say elves, didn't ya? But its Japanese name is a gnome, literally a gnome. I can't believe my guy is the Smurf of legendaries. Anyway, let's move on from the Lake Trio and talk about the main trio of the Sinnoh region, the Creation Trio. The three Pokemon Arceus created first, each born to govern a different aspect of the universe. Dialga was created to govern time. As long as its heart beats, time flows, and it has the ability to traverse time with no issue. Dialga also possesses an origin form, which is different from the primal reversions of the previous generations. The origin form returns Dialga to a form closer to Arceus that, admittedly, looks a bit dumb. Unlike primal reversion, there is no change to ability or strength for the origin form, despite the fact that the Pokedex entries implies that it is stronger. Low-key, I kinda hope that these forms get changed to primal reversions now that Megas are back, but I don't know that something like that is likely. Dialga also likely represents the solid state of matter, as it is part steel type, and its unique item is the Adamant Orb, a word that used to be closely related to the hardness of diamond. Palkia, on the other hand, represents the expanse of space. As it breathes, space becomes more stable, and its control over not just space but also dimensions allows it to travel to wherever it wants, whenever it wants. Once again, its origin form is supposedly a form closer to Arceus, even if it is a choice. It also likely represents the liquid state of matter thanks to its water typing. Both Dialga and Palkia seem to be inspired by the legend of Izanami and Izagami, who created the islands of Japan by building a spear on a pillar, which is why the origin of the Sinnoh region is called Spear Pillar. And finally is Giratina. I know up to this point we've covered Pokemon in Pokedex order, but for Giratina it just makes more sense to keep it with its trio than it does to put it in its correct spot. Giratina has a fairly similar origin to Dialga and Palkia. Originally, it was created to govern an aspect of the universe, antimatter. However, for some reason, Giratina was a lot more violent than the others, so Arceus banished it to the Distortion World for its violence. Despite this, when the world and the universe itself were in danger of being destroyed by Cyrus, Giratina came to the aid of Dialga and Palkia, releasing them before taking Cyrus to the Distortion World with it. I think this kind of recontextualizes the violence Giratina might have participated in. It clearly cares about Arceus' universe to some extent, or it wouldn't have stopped Cyrus. So perhaps its violence was aimed at those who disrespected the universe, but it went too far. Or perhaps its intervention was a mercy for Cyrus, as the intervention of Arceus probably would not have had such an amicable end.
God, these are all sick,
As for inspiration, Giratina seems to be inspired by fallen angels, as the stories of God banishing angels to hell are not all that different from the stories of Arceus banishing Giratina to the Distortion World. Additionally, the body parts of Giratina seem to be arranged into the Devil's Number, as its altered form has 6 legs, 6 spikes on its wings, and 6 little neck things, and its origin form has 6 wings, 6 spikes on its body, and 6 little neck things as well. And yes, we can just say it, Giratina's origin form does look way better than Dialga or Palkia's. This trio is undoubtedly one of my favorites, not just for their lore, but also for their designs. But I'm also just a bit of a Sinnoh fan in general, so I might be biased. Anyway, Sinnoh still has more legendaries, including possibly one of the most random legendaries of all time, Heatran. Like, why does this guy exist? Don't get me wrong, I don't mind Heatran, but he's not part of any other legendary group or duo or anything. Bro just kind of exists and is a very bizarre standalone legendary. Even its dex entry just makes it sound like a normal Pokemon. It dwells in volcanic caves, digging with its cross-like claws. Like, if you told me that was the dex entry for Excadrill or something, I would probably believe you. It is mentioned in Legends Arceus that it is formed from the magma within Mount Coronet, so maybe that's why it's legendary, but who knows. One legendary whose existence does make sense though is Regigigas, as he's basically introduced as the leader of the Regis. It was originally created to tow the continents themselves across the earth, but it was later imprisoned by people who feared its power, which is pretty valid if we're being honest. A Pokemon that can move an entire continent is incredibly powerful. I'd be afraid of that too. Much like the original 3 golems, Regigigas was likely inspired by the golems Titans of Hebrew mythology, but the fact it got sealed away means it could also be inspired by the Titans of Greek mythology and their sealing of the Titans. The final potential inspiration I could find is Aumi-Sunu, a demigod from Kunubiki mythology that had the strength to move large chunks of land on a rope. And the final Pokemon before we get into the mythicals is Cresselia. Cresselia is the lunar Pokemon, and as such has a close association to the moon. It's even found on Full Moon Island, as if that wasn't a clear enough connection. Interestingly though, it doesn't represent the full moon, but the quarter or crescent moon, which also makes sense, but still. It's said that people who hold Cresselia's feathers are guaranteed to have joyful dreams, and according to Legends Arceus, it resembles the heavenly maiden that created the Milky Way, which is a very interesting statement, but it's not mentioned anywhere else, so it's probably not actually that important in lore. But that description is very similar to Xiainu, the Chinese goddess of the moon, which could be a strong inspiration for Cresselia. Cresselia also has a connection to Darkrai, who we'll talk about in a little bit. First though, we have to talk about Manaphy. Am I forgetting someone? Nah. Manaphy is an interesting mythical. According to its dex entry, Manaphy is highly affected by the environments it lives in, and it has a unique knack of bonding with any Pokemon. Its body is 80% water, which makes sense as it is based on sea angels. Although, considering humans are 70% water, being 80% water as a water type doesn't actually sound all that impressive. Its most defining trait, though, is being the only mythical Pokemon that can breed, as when it breeds with a Ditto, it produces a Phione. You didn't think I'd actually leave Phione out, did ya? The reason I've been teasing about forgetting Phione is because there's just not much to say about it. The Pokemon likes warm water and can float around with the sack on its head. That's pretty much all the information we have on it. Even by the standards of mythical Pokemon, it does feel pretty neglected. Next is another Pokemon that has been pretty heavily neglected, especially in recent years. Darkrai. It just hasn't been the same since the Dark Void nerf, man. Darkrai is the opposite of Cresselia, and as such, centers on nightmares. In fact, it even has a unique ability that does passive damage to sleeping Pokemon just to drive home the point. Interestingly though, Darkrai is not an evil Pokemon despite its highly edgy design and dark typing. Really, it only afflicts those near it with nightmares as a method of self-defense. Although this dex entry does make its actions in Black and White 2 a bit more confusing. As for inspiration, Darkrai seems to be most directly connected to Naknitsa, an evil spirit in Slavic folklore that torments children in their sleep and slowly drains their life energy, which, again, kind of betrays the idea that it's not evil. Our penultimate mythical from Sinnoh is one of my personal favorites of the group.
So I might have to,
Shaman. Shaman is known to purify any areas of nature it resides in. It can always expel the toxins within its immediate radius. It also appears to act as a symbol of the changing seasons, not unlike Enamorus or the legendary birds. Shaman has a secondary form known as Shaman Sky. It is a form that is obtained by coming in close contact with the Gracidea flower. While in this form, Shaman is much more playful and courageous, but it will revert back to its normal form if night falls or if it gets frozen. Although as a grass flying type, this thing is not getting frozen very often. It just gets KO'd. As for inspiration, there doesn't seem to be a very clear mythological one. It's just a grassy hedgehog or a grassy reindeer. And now we have the final and first legendary of Sinnoh, Arceus, the god of Pokemon, responsible for the creation of the universe and many of the Pokemon within it. We all know the myth at this point. First, there was nothing. Then, there was an egg that hatched into Arceus. Arceus would then form the creation trio as it shaped the universe with its 1,000 arms, which might be the unknown. After it was finished, it entered a deep slumber to rest and let the universe flourish and develop organically. Now, it can be found in the Halls of Origin, which reside above Spear Pillar. Its inspiration is very clearly gods in general, as well as the World Egg and perhaps Orpha's egg as well. Now let's move into Unova, which means we actually start with a mythical Pokemon for once, Victini. Victini is the victory Pokemon. Apparently, trainers with Victini will always win their matches, which is kind of crazy because that's not how it goes for me. It also has the ability to create infinite energy within its body, which it can then share with whoever it touches, which is kind of crazy as well. Like this one dude can fix our entire issue of carbon emissions. Moving on though, we have another legendary trio, kind of, the Swords of Justice. These three are said to protect Pokemon from both both natural and human-made disasters. Their leader is Cobalion, who has been known to fight against human disasters specifically. It has a heart of steel, and while it is calm and composed, its iron glare can make almost any other Pokemon or person obey it. It is a natural-born leader and appears to be based on Athos from the Three Musketeers. Next is Terrakion, who protects Pokemon whose homes have been lost in wars. It is strong enough to break through walls with little issue and is based on Porthos from, again, the Three Musketeers. And finally is Verizon, who fights against humans to protect its friends. It is extremely fast and can confuse opponents with its movements. Virizion is based on Amaris from the Three Musketeers. All three of these guys work in tandem to protect Pokemon in different ways, but unfortunately that's kind of all we know about them. They're very neglected as far as legendary trios go, but they do get future Paradox forms in Scarlet and Violet. All of these forms are basically robotic versions of the modern variants, but their dex entries don't exactly reveal a ton of new information about them. It is also kind of sadly ironic that a trio focused on protecting nature ended up getting remade as robots. The Swords of Justice do actually have a fourth member though, in the mythical Pokemon Keldeo. Keldeo was not originally a member of the Swords of Justice, but after being taken in by the trio and being taught how to fight, it quickly became their strongest member. It also has the Resolute form, which is supposed to be stronger, but nothing really changes about it aside from it learning Secret Sword, which is different from Sacred Sword as I am learning as I write this video. While in Resolute form, it becomes far faster and far stronger, gaining the ability to cut through anything with its new horn. It seems to be inspired by the kelp of Scottish cryptozoology, as well as Detardigan from the Three Musketeers. But as cool and unfortunately neglected as the Swords of Justice are, we have to move on, because it's time to talk about the genies. Who doesn't love these guys? Tornadus is the first one we have to talk about. Tornadus zooms around on a cloud at up to 200 miles per hour. It can create strong gusts of wind due to its speed and can expel huge gusts of wind from its tail as well. Individually, it is likely based on Fujin from Japanese mythology. Next is Thundurus, who is said to fly around firing off lightning bolts from its tail. These lightning bolts apparently have the ability to enrich the soil they strike. More notable about Thundurus though is that the legendary is in an unending beef with Thundurus, with the duo constantly fighting whenever they come in contact. Thundurus is the second Pokemon we've seen based on Raijin, the Kami of Lightning. And finally, we have Landorus. While this Pokemon might be seen as evil by competitive players, it's actually surprisingly helpful according to its dex entries, as lands that are visited by Landorus are granted hugely bountiful crops. Its dex entry says that this is done using the forces of wind and thunder, which seems to insinuate it can harness the energy created by Thundurus and Tornadus. In fact, Legends Arceus says that Landorus is the one who stops the other two from beefing. This genie seems to be based on Ikari Okami, a land deity of Japanese myth, but it could also be inspired by the Jin of the East Wind, Urus, as it is often seen with crops and dry wind. All three of the genies also have a secondary form known as Therian forms, which are based on the Chinese four symbols or auspicious beasts. Thundurus is the Azure Dragon, Tornadus is the Vermilion Bird, and Landorus represents the White Tiger. But wait, if there are 4 Chinese symbols, why are there only 3 genies? That is a great question, and the answer is because there is a 4th genie who was just introduced like a whole decade later in Legends Arceus. It's Enamorus. Enamorus is a lot more in line with Landorus, as its presence brings an end to winter, causing plant life to bud and grow across the region it lives in. It is likely based on Ugajin, a fertility goddess within Japanese mythology, and maybe more specifically Benzaiten. Its Therian form is, of course, based on the final Chinese auspicious beast, the Black Tortoise. We have just 3 legendaries left to cover in the Unova region before our next set of mythicals, and those are, of course, the box legendaries, Reshiram, Zekrom, and Kyurem. These 3 are often called the Tau Trio by fans due to their symbolic connection to Taoist iconography, but this is not the title the Pokemon Company uses formally. These 3 Pokemon likely come from one Pokemon known as the Single Dragon. See, the Unova region was originally founded by 2 brothers, one who wanted to search for truth and one who wanted to chase ideals. Both brothers were guarded and guided by a single dragon, and as the 2 brothers fought, the single dragon split itself into 2, Reshiram, who sided with truth, and Zekrom, who sided with ideals. Reshiram is meant to represent Yang in the yin-yang circle in Taoism. Its fire is said to burn those who reject truth. Zekrom represents the yin side, and its electricity is said to destroy those who lose righteousness in their hearts. But there's a possibility this split of the dragon was not perfect. Depending on the sources you use, there could have been leftovers made in the process, which would take the form of Kyurem. Kyurem. The reason I say this might not be the case is due to an old legend in La Kusona town, which states that Kyurem originates from a crashed meteor rather than being a part of the single dragon. Technically, both of these can be true simultaneously if we assume the entire single dragon is what crash landed in the meteor and not just Kyurem, but I feel like the pieces don't quite fit right for that to be true. Regardless of its origin, Kyurem has the ability to fuse with both Reshiram and Zekrom to become either white or black Kyurem respectively. This is done via the DNA splicers, and in both forms it essentially gains a bunch of signature moves and not much else. Not even Kyurem's typing changes, even though I always thought it did for some reason. Rather than representing yin or yang like its counterpoints, Kyurem actually represents Wuji, or the absence of yin and yang, more specifically the state of ultimate nothingness. I've been thinking about making a video that really dives into Kyurem like I did for Necrozma, so if that is something you want to see, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. For now though, we have to move on to the last two mythicals of the Unova region, Meloetta and Genesect. Meloetta is of course a music-based Pokemon, and it has the ability to control the feelings of those who hear its music. It has two forms, Aria, which is normal and psychic, and Pirouette, which is normal and fighting. It switches between these two forms using Relic Song, which is a pretty cool way to change forms. The idea here is that the Aria form is supposed to represent more of a singer. Specifically, I believe in opera singer, as the aria is a type of song that is instrumental to opera. Get it? Instrumental. Pretty good. Pirouette, on the other hand, is a ballet dancer, which we can deduce from the significance of pirouettes in ballet. One cool detail is that her hair is actually a music staff like you would find on sheet music, as it has 5 lines and 4 spaces, which is customary in the Western styles of music her forms are based on. Genesect, on the other hand, has one of the coolest origins in my opinion. It is a reanimated fossil Pokemon that has been upgraded by putting a cannon on its back. Part of this upgrade is that it can change the type of its signature move, Technoblast, depending on the different drive it holds. It can become electric, fire, ice, or water, but honestly, I think they should have just given it different forms like Rotom. Like, it's crazy that this little dude has more flexibility with its unique forms than a mythical. A lot of people suspect the ancient Pokemon that acted as the base for Genesect was Kabutops, due to their similarities in stature and posture, but we don't know exactly when Kabutops went extinct, so it's hard to say if this is true or not. Regardless, it's time to move on from the Unova region and talk about the Kalos legendaries, which are known as the Aura Trio. Yeah, these guys are actually the only legendaries in Gen 6 if you exclude the mythicals. Not sure exactly why these games were so low on legendaries, but Zygarde alone is like 4, so that kind of makes up for it. First though, we have to talk about Xerneas, and oh dear, does this one have a lot going on. Xerneas is a Pokemon that can share eternal life, which is done when the antlers on its head start to glow. In X, it is this power that allowed the ultimate weapon to fire and brought Floette back to life. Because Xerneas can command an unlimited amount of life energy, it could potentially create its own rogue mega evolution event similar to Anj. Obviously, Xerneas' most direct inspiration is Yggdrasil, the Tree of Life. I'm sure I don't need to tell you why. Yveltal, on the other hand, is a Pokemon that absorbs life energy and is generally connected to death and destruction. It needs to maintain a balance with Xerneas to keep the Kalos region stable, as too much life or too much death could lead to the deterioration of the ecosystem. When there's too much energy, Yveltal is generally the one to clean that up, but not much more is known about how it absorbs life energy. Unlike Xerneas, Yveltal doesn't seem to have a direct inspiration within mythology. It seems like the Morrigan is the closest, as it is an eagle that sits at the edge of the world. Also, in case it wasn't obvious, Yveltal is based on the letter Y, and Xerneas is based on the letter X. So I'm sure you can guess what Zygarde is based on, right? Well, I can't, because this does not look like a Z to me. Where do we start with Zygarde? At its base, Zygarde is a collection of cells that are individually too weak to even be considered Pokemon. They
The verdict is in.
coalescing around a Zygarde core to combine their power, which
Turn this down.
grows after reaching certain thresholds. The first
Let me turn this
threshold
down.
is at 10%, which
The verdict is in.
the 10% form.
The best Trader Joe's chicken, like little, the little frozen meals they have, as far as the chicken goes, is the teriyaki chicken one.
Its fangs. It's also pretty fast, as it can run at land speeds that exceed 60 miles per hour.
By far the best one.
Inspiration could be the wolf god Fenrir, who is one of Loki's children. The second
I had the order one recently.
where Zygarde takes on
I had this General Tso's chicken recently. The teriyaki one is the best one. Also has the best macros.
Eyes are reminiscent of compound eyes in the real world. 50% Zygarde is the form we originally see in X and Y, and it is at this point that Zygarde starts to monitor the ecosystem for those who might seek to destroy it. It's apparently hugely vicious and ruthless in this form, showing no mercy to those This form is likely based on another one of Loki's children, Jormungandr, which is a large serpent that encircles Earth, providing a connection to both its snake-like stature and its connection to Earth. 100% form is created when all of Zygarde is in one place, and it is even far stronger than the 50% form. It can overpower even Xerneas and Yveltal without too much issue.
What?
The orifice on its chest can produce enough energy to eliminate almost anything. This form might be based on Hel, another child of Loki. However, I think it's far more likely that it is based on giant mechs, because, I mean, just look at it. It's also worth noting that in the video games, Zygarde Complete can only be accessed if 10% or 50% Zygarde fall below 50% HP, at which point they will
Was he flying with them little ass drones in the cartoon?
as a balancing mechanic, as having Complete Zygarde at 100% HP would have just been broken. I wish they had thought a little bit more about said balancing mechanics when it comes to Mega Zygarde, because this thing is just so insane. Mega Zygarde is just Zygarde Complete, but with a laser cannon. It has the same amount of cells, but they have been reorganized to optimize its strength. We can see this pretty clearly as the wings
The Pokemon looks so fucking lame.
Zygarde Complete are now completely gone. Instead, many of them have been reallocated to this.
He's so. What is he, a fucking missile launching blimp, motherfucker? It's so lame, bro.
That's not important. Zygarde seems to only Mega Evolve in response to people's emotions, and it uses its immense power to calm and protect them. Inspirations for Mega Zygarde are still being largely worked out due to its newness, but some people have pointed out how it kind of
Newness.
looks like a tree, or how its cannon is made out of wood, driving home its connection to the ecosystem. For a Pokemon that's gotten as much love as Zygarde, I feel like we still don't know that much
What,
about
really?
it. Like, we know what it does, but where did it come from? Why does it protect the ecosystem, and why is it so strong? This dude was zipping around Lumios for the entirety of Legends ZA, and I feel like we got so few answers as to
I guess,
why
folks.
it
Okay,
was
if he's
so
protecting the
big.
ecosystem, I could dig that.
Mythicals to talk about, starting with Diancie, aka knockoff Carbink. That's not even a joke, it's literally a mutated Carbink, albeit a strong
I just don't like how he
variation.
looks.
Diancie has the ability to create diamonds by creating a high amount of pressure between its hands, but where it really shines is its Mega, as it's the only mythical Pokemon with a Mega evolution at the time of recording. Besides that, though, our information on Diancie is pretty
What?
limited,
That must be
so
mythical,
let's move
right?
on to the most relevant mythical of Kalos, Hoopa. Hoopa's main shtick is being able to make wormholes, more specifically hyperspace holes, which are created with its rings. These can transport people and Pokemon to different dimensions whenever Hoopa desires, and it even seems to have its own secret dimension that it puts things in to keep them safe. However, Hoopa is actually much more powerful than just this little guy. He also has his Unbound form, which was originally sealed away in the prison
Holy
bottle
shit.
because it was just too destructive. In this form, its rings can stretch miles in length, and at one point it appeared to move an entire castle in the Kalos region. This means that all the hoops we see in the Hoenn region are the work of Hoopa, and considering Hoopa appears to be important to the new Legends ZA DLC, I'd say we're about to learn a whole bunch more about this little guy. And finally, we have Volcanion. I don't know why, but I always just kind of forget about Volcanion. Its design always reminded me of a knockoff Heatranobit, and I never really paid attention to it, which is unfortunate because it does have the very cool typing of Water-Fire. Volcanion.
Alright, well, I was gonna hit level 55
which isn't
in these
all that
boosts, but this guy has to
surprising,
go,
but
so
the sheer power Volcanion
that's how it
holds.
goes.
It can apparently blow away mountains when it expels its internal steam. The exact inspiration for Volcanion is once again not all that clear. It's most likely geysers or volcanic activity, but besides that, it's kind of hard to point down a deity or something like that. And with that, we've covered all the legendaries in Kalos, which means it's time to move to the Alola region. But
Refund me,
I do
bitch.
have to admit
What?
something.
70?
We
No, 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 no,
won't be
140.
covering the Ultra Beasts in this video, nor the Paradox Pokemon, aside from the ones that are also legendaries. These sets of Pokemon exist in a weird gray area where they're unique Pokemon but not classified as legendaries. Plus, this video is going to be long enough as is. If you really want me to make a similar video about the Ultra Beasts or Paradox Pokemon, let me know and I'll do it.
This guy dumb?
Now, though, we have to get into our first legendary of Alola, Type Null. Okay, I know it might sound crazy to call Type Null a legendary and not the Ultra Beasts, but I'm just trying to follow the Bulbapedia page. Type Null is one of the few normal type legendary
Hold up.
Pokemon. It was originally created by the Aether Foundation in an attempt to essentially recreate Arceus as an Ultra Beast fighting life form. However, when the models were being programmed with the Arceus system, they all went insane and had to be put in these limiter helmets that we see them in. This greatly limits Type Null's power and makes them easier to control control, but it is possible to free Typhonol from these helmets via its evolution. It evolves via friendship.
Cool. He ain't trying to rob me. We're good.
Valley, another normal type Pokemon that actually has the ability Arceus System, which allows it to change its typing depending on the memory it holds, similar to Arceus and the plates. So it turns out all Typhonol really needed was a little bit of love. I guess that really tells you how
Man, this is...
Foundation was treating
I changed my mind. This is not very good.
It seems to be based on the concept
No, I think,
of Chimera, as they are essentially a mishmash of a bunch of different body parts.
making Chicken at home is the only way to do it.
Recognize any of the body parts from Pokemon that we've seen so far. While I'm sure it's not the inspiration for Silvally, the name Silvally has always reminded me of Silicon Valley, the major tech hub in the United States. But considering how this Pokemon was made using advanced technology, maybe it's possible, but I don't think it's likely. Next, we have the Tapu Quartet. These four are the protectors of Alola, with each one protecting their own island. Tapu Koko is the protector of Melemele and is brimming with curiosity. Despite being a protector, Tapu Koko will not just help anyone. It can be quite fickle with those who it helps, but it does help those who absolutely need it. Tapu Koko can summon thunderclouds and it's pretty fast all around. Apparently it also has some anger management problems because it gets mad very easily, but will just as easily forget what made it angry. It is likely based on Kuka Ilimoku, one of the 4 major Hawaiian gods, which is often depicted as being covered in feathers. Tapu Lele is the protector of Akawa Island, and it is apparently really cruel. All of its dex entries mention it being guiltlessly cruel, but none of them give examples or anything, which is a bit bizarre. The Pokemon is often described as nature incarnate for its apathetic nature, and its scales are able to heal those who touch it. But if you touch them too much, they can actually hurt you. It is likely inspired by Kani, another one of the big 4 Hawaiian gods, as Kani was the god that first gave life to humans, similar to how Tapu Lele can heal those who touch its scales. You know, between Tapu Koko's fickleness and Tapu Lele's cruelty, I'm starting to get the impression these guardians are not as benevolent as I once believed. But surely the next one will be, right? Well, probably not, because it's Tapu Bulu. Tapu Bulu is the guardian of Ula Ula.
Come on, game.
And its main power revolves around causing vegetation to grow. But don't be mistaken, it is still a very violent Pokemon. The most obvious example of this is the ruins of the Tapu Village, which was destroyed by Tapu Bulu after humans built a thrifty Megamart on land that angered Tapu Bulu. To be fair, Tapu Bulu isn't outright angry or cruel like the first 2 seem to be. In fact, it doesn't even like fighting and tries to avoid it, but when it does fight or when it gets offended, it gets exceedingly violent. Its most clear inspiration is Alono, the Hawaiian god of agriculture. And finally is Tapu Fini, who is both feared and respected. A deep fog surrounds Tapu Fini at all times, and it is said that terrible calamities occasionally befall those who approach the Pokemon within the fog. Tapu Fini has the ability to control water, and is yet another legendary that can create pure water, getting rid of any uncleanliness. It apparently does not like humans and finds us generally disgusting thanks to our history, which totally valid, but it will still lend aid to those who are deemed worthy. The guardian of Pawnee Island is based on the final of the 4 major Hawaiian gods, Kanaloa, the god of the ocean. If one thing has been made clear by diving into the guardians of Alola, it's that they truly care about the region and not really the people that live there. This isn't super surprising, but I still wanted to make sure it was clear. Anyway, let's talk about Cosmog and Cosmoem. These 2 are weird, as they toe the line between Legendary and Ultra Beast. Cosmog is said to be from an entirely different world, and its body is so light that even just a slight breeze can blow it around. For a long time, it was known as the Child of the Stars to the people of Alola. At level 43, it evolves into Cosmoem, meaning it is one of the few legendaries that actually have an evolution line. Cosmoem is essentially a chrysalis, as its body becomes a hard shell, while the Pokemon absorbs starlight and dust to fuel its next evolution. These 2 are obviously based on heavenly
Man,
bodies,
this is really not very good.
black holes specifically. At level 53, they will evolve into either Solgaleo or Lunala, depending on the game you have. These 2 are members of the Light Trio, along with Necrozma, who we'll talk about in a second. Solgaleo
gotta go to
is based
default.
on the
Boom.
sun and sunlight. It is said to live on another world, and that the light that radiates from its body is bright enough to make even the darkest of midnights seem like daytime. This is likely because its body is literally made of light. Like, it doesn't just
Wait a second.
light, it literally is light. Solgaleo also has the ability to open ultra wormholes at will and traverse ultra space. While its main inspiration is obviously the sun and stars in general, it is likely also inspired by the alchemical lion, which is a lion that devours.
What the fuck is
Lunala,
this?
On the other hand, is inspired
Oh,
by the moon
I need to
and moonlight. However, unlike
delete
Solgaleo,
bartender.
which is constantly radiating light, Lunala constantly absorbs it, creating the darkness of the new moon night even during the brightest of days. Interestingly though,
I no longer need Bartender on Classic, which is awesome.
Like Solgaleo. As for its inspiration, there's
Because
not quite as clear as Solgaleo, but there are a few potential ones. It
they
could be
added
based on Zamazotz, a
custom
minor
or
battle
edit mode.
associated with night as well as death, or it could be inspired by its Papalat, an Aztec star demon and goddess. Death and night go hand in hand for many cultures, so nailing down one specific inspiration for Lunala is not really possible. And in case you didn't know, these two can reproduce in some manner to create Cosmog, but the exact process is unknown to us at this time and will likely always be. Despite how strong these two might sound, they're actually both prey to an even larger beast, Necrozma. Necrozma is not a beast by nature. In fact, for the vast majority of its existence, it was a pretty benevolent Pokemon. It existed essentially as the god of light and ultra space, opening ultra wormholes and going world to world as it saw fit, where it would then bless the worlds with its unending light. However, it eventually made its way to Ultra Megalopolis, where it was taken captive. The Ultra Megalopolans wanted to use Necrozma's life energy for themselves and tried to harvest it by force, but in the process permanently injured it, causing Necrozma to constantly leak light and exist in unending pain. This is why it exists in the base Necrozma form as we know it. Immediately after this incident, it took all the light from Ultra Megalopolis to try and regain its original body, but even all the light in Ultra Megalopolis wasn't enough, so it went to another world,
Ultra
did the same,
Megalopolis.
and then another, and another, over and over again to try and stop the pain it was experiencing. One of the ways it can end this pain, at least temporarily, is to take control of Solgaleo or Lunala, as both beings are made of light and can therefore act as energy sources for Necrozma, but it seems to lose control of these two if it enters its true form, which cannot be maintained, causing it to once again return to its base injured form and repeat the cycle infinitely. It's actually one of the most tragic Pokemon out there in my opinion, but I don't want to get too much further into it as I already did an entire video on Necrozma, so if you want a more in-depth look at it, maybe check that out as well. For now though, we have to cover more mythicals, starting with Magearna. Built around 500 years ago, Magearna is a robot that has been brought to life via a soul heart, an artificial soul that gives Magearna the ability to understand human speech and feel emotions. Magearna technically has two forms, the form we see her in the modern day and the form with her original paint on it, which looks kind of like a Pokeball. If I can be so honest,
You know what would be
I thought
sick?
this was its shiny form until literally this second, but it turns out to be a whole separate form, which is kind of neat. As for its inspiration, it is obviously
As if they did
inspired by
Pokemon
robots,
games.
but I think it is also inspired by the idea of Karakuki puppets as well. It always kind of reminds me of the
And movies.
as well when I see
And,
it, but I think it's just a coincidence. Next is Zeraora. Zeraora is pretty underwhelming in my opinion. It's not bad, but much like Volcanion, I just find it kind of uninspiring. It can electrify its claws and use them to tear opponents apart. See, this is what I mean. That could just be a dex entry for like 50 different electric type Pokemon. It doesn't feel like it has any defining mythical qualities. It is supposedly super fast though, so I guess that's cool. As for inspiration, it seems to basically be the same as Raikou and Thundurus Therian. Maybe the Pokemon Company really is running out of ideas. A third electric cat legendary? Insane. And finally in Alola, we have Meltan and Melmetal, who are unique because they're the only mythicals capable of evolving. Melmetal is also the only mythical to get a Gigantamax form as well, where it has Onigiri for feet. Meltan basically sustains itself by eating and dissolving metal. They tend to live in groups when they first form, until one Meltan, which is stronger than the rest, essentially absorbs all the other ones and becomes Melmetal. Then, at the end of Melmetal's lifespan, it will rust and fall apart, with its body parts becoming more Meltans, which is a pretty cool life cycle if you ask me. Its inspiration is likely metal alloys and metals with low melting points like mercury or gallium. It's a pretty cool Pokemon, but we have to move into the Galar region, where we have another lot of legendary Pokemon to cover. First up are Zacian and Zamazenta. These two are the legendary Pokemon that saved Galar during its darkest day 3,000 years ago. Together they represent a sword and shield, Zacian being the sword and Zamazenta representing the shield. Both of them have two forms, the base form which is somewhat strong but nothing special, and the crowned forms which are much stronger. In order to obtain the crowned forms, these two must
Cinderace is a fucking dope Pokemon, dude.
Shield respectively. In their crowned forms, they gain a fairly significant stat boost and also get unique abilities. Zacian's raises its attack stat upon entering battle, and Zamazenta raises its defense stat. Originally in Sword and Shield, this happened every time they entered battle, but this made Zacian so overpowered that they had to nerf it going into Scarlet and Violet. They also nerfed Zamazenta as well, even though it wasn't nearly as useful, which felt kind of unfair at the time, but on hindsight was probably good considering Zamazenta is pretty strong even after the nerf. These two are based on King Arthur's Sword and Shield, Excalibur and Windigbirthtur, or Pridwen. You might be wondering what it was that threatened Galar during its darkest day. Well, that would be our next legendary Pokemon, Eternatus. Eternatus originally arrived on Earth 20,000 years ago in a meteorite, but slumbered peacefully and silently for about 17,000 years. It wasn't until 3,000 years ago, which is around the same time the ultimate weapon was first fired in Kalos, that it awoke and plunged Galar into darkness by absorbing the energy of the lands via the core in its chest. Once it absorbs all the available energy, it will take on its Eternamax form, which is far stronger. It seems to be inspired by dragons just in general, and potentially also nuclear energy, with its seemingly infinite energy and the way it leaks energy into the land via Dynamax. While that is all the legendaries they put into the base games of Sword and Shield, there are still quite a few that were added in the DLC as well, like Kubfu and Urshifu. Kubfu trains hard to attain perfection and can become a more focused fighter when it pulls at its hair. It has to work hard to train both
Kubfu is so sick, dude.
Before it can evolve. But not all Kubfu get the chance to evolve, as the only way for it to evolve is through the special scrolls Mustard has in his dojo. Using these scrolls, it can learn one of two moves which will determine which Urshifu it evolves into. If it reads the scroll of Darkness, it will become Urshifu Single Strike, a fighting dark type with unique move Wicked Blow. If it reads the scroll of Waters, it will become Rapid Strike, a fighting water type with the unique move Surging Strikes. Both of these moves are incredibly good as they always crit, but what makes Urshifu a truly broken Pokemon is its unique ability, Unchained Fist, which allows its attacks to go.
How do you get Kubfu? Because
it's really one of the most broken Pokemon ever created, but somehow it's not even the most broken Pokemon introduced in Galar. Before we get into the horses though, we have to finish with the Reggies. That's right, the final two Reggies were introduced as recently as Sword and Shield, and they're Regieleki and Regidrago. Regieleki is most notable for having the highest speed stat of any Pokemon, as it sits at 200. It is a literal cluster of electrical energy, with the rings around its body helping to regulate and limit said energy. Much like the other Reggies, Regieleki was originally formed by Regigigas before it was sealed away by people who started to fear the power it held. Regidrago, on the other hand, is made of crystallized draconic energy and supposedly has all the powers of every dragon-type Pokemon. It too was created by Regigigas before being sealed away. But besides that, we don't have much information on this Pokemon. We're getting to the point where the Pokemon we're talking about are still relatively new, meaning the information we have on them is limited. So if these descriptions seem to be getting shorter, that's because they probably are. The last trio of Pokemon introduced in Galar is Calyrex and its two horses, Glastrier and Spectrier. Calyrex is a bit of a wild Pokemon, like in a figurative sense. Apparently, it used to rule the entirety of Galar back in ancient times. It was known as the King of Bountiful Harvests. It can even see the future to an extent, as it once saved a Pokemon from a meteor that was going to kill it. However, it lost power over time, and as humans grew, their reliance on Calyrex dwindled, leading to it becoming nothing more than a fable. When at full power, Calyrex is capable of wielding the reins of power, an item that allows it to ride either Glastrier or Spectrier. Glastrier is pretty strong on its own, with the mask covering its face being 100 times as hard as diamonds. It can be belligerent and cold, both literally and figuratively. Spectrier dashes through the night, absorbing the life force of creatures around it. It senses its surroundings using all of its senses except sight. When these horses are ridden by their master, they gain a new ability, as one, which combines the abilities of the horses with the ability of Calyrex. The relationship for these three seems to be drawn from the legend of Brian Boru and the Puka, an old Irish legend where Brian tames a horse named Puka using a special bridle which contained the hair of the horse itself, much like the Reins of Unity. And the last Pokemon introduced in Galar is Zarude. Zarude lives in dense forests along with others of its kind. It is incredibly aggressive, and many other Pokemon of the forest fear it. However, when vines are torn off Zarude, they help the plant life around it grow, so it's not like evil. Zarude also has a secondary form known as Zarudada, which is almost identical, except at one point it cured for a human child, which changed it to be less violent. Okay, We're almost there. Just one more region and we're done. This video has been a massive undertaking, so I hope you've all enjoyed it. And if you have watched all the way through up to this point, seriously, thank you. It really means a lot to me that you would give up over an hour of your day to watch this. Now, without further ado, let's get into Paldea and its legendaries. Right off the bat, we have a legendary quartet to cover, the Treasures of Ruin. The Treasures of Ruin originated from a region far to the east of Paldea and were brought across the land by a merchant who sold them to the king at the time, who was obsessed with riches. While the treasures were dormant when they arrived, over time they were awoken by the king's greed, and the quartet
Just making your bed, buddy.
berserk, threatening the stability of the entire kingdom. They were later imprisoned in 4 shrines across the region and were sealed with stakes that must be removed from the ground before they can be reopened. The first is Woshan, the Tablets of Ruin. It drains the life force from vegetation and can cause entire forests to wither within seconds. It first manifested from the grudge of a person who was punished for writing the king's evil deeds upon the tablets. Next is the Sword of Ruin, Xian Pao.
Ooh, look at that
Controls
guy.
over 100 tons of snow at a time, causing massive avalanches. In classic cat fashion, though, Woshan just wants to play in the snow and is oblivious to the damage it has done. It is
Thanks,
the
buddy.
embodiment of the hatred people have for the sword that now hangs from its mouth. Following Xian Pao is the Vessel of Ruin, Ting Lu, whose head is so heavy it creates ravines 160 feet deep simply by smashing it into the ground. It is the embodiment of the fear that was poured into the vessel upon its head. And finally are the Beads of Ruin, Qi Yu, which can control
Yeah, I have
flames
that guy
burn
too.
at over 5,400 degrees Fahrenheit. It can swim through lava with no issue at all and melts the rocks and sand it passes. It is the embodiment of the envy that resides within the beads, as they were the root causes of multiple conflicts. The 4 treasures of ruin are based on the 4 perils of Chinese mythology: chaos
Hey, put that on.
incarnate, a gluttonous beast, a vicious tiger, and the recorder of evil deeds. The 4 perils have a lot more depth than just that though, and I can't really get into them in this video. Following the treasures of ruin, we have our final mascot legendaries, Koraidon and Miraidon. These two are pretty cool, as they're essentially the same Pokemon at different points in their evolution. Koraidon is the ancient prehistoric ancestor of Cyclizar, and Miraidon is what it evolves into. Maybe. This information comes from the alien version of the Professor, but another version of the Professor suggests that these two are alternative versions of Cyclizar from entirely different timelines. Whichever one you choose to believe is up to you. One of the defining features of both these Pokemon is actually just how little we know about them, as basically all their Pokedex entries say is that we know nothing about them and they're really strong. One thing we do know though is that they're both mentioned in the Scarlet and Violet books, with Koraidon being mentioned as the Winged King and Miraidon being mentioned as the Iron Serpent. These two are of course very closely related to their respective Paradox Pokemon, and both obviously take inspiration from motorcycles. Maybe a bit more than just inspiration if we're being honest. Our final legendary trio is unfortunately probably also the lamest one. Look, I'm not trying to
Monkey
be a
Dory and
hater, but
Okie
the other
Dokie.
three are
Ugh.
just so boring to me. I'm sorry. They're considered the heroes of Kitakami and were worshipped after they protected the land from Ogerpon while under the control of Pecharunt. All 3 were once incredibly weak Pokemon, but their desire to improve their flaws led them all to Pecharunt, who helped them do just that. Okidogi was once weak, but thanks to Pecharunt's toxic
Yeah,
chain,
just
became
relax.
strong.
You know,
Okidori was
you tear
once
up all the
deluded,
blankets and
but
stuff.
became intelligent. Fezandipiti was originally an ugly bird and became a beautiful one, both because of the mythical as well. Although I'm not sure I see the beauty that Fezandipiti desire. This whole trio is likely inspired by the Japanese folktale Momotaro, in which a boy named Momotaro is born within a peach and then travels with a dog, a monkey, and a pheasant to fight a bunch of ogres. I'm assuming I don't need to explain how this inspiration connects, so let's just move on to Ogerpon, who I just adore. What a queen. She loves mischief, she's curious, I mean, what's not to love? Ogerpon is one of the few Pokemon that gets new forms via terrestrialization. The form depends on the mask she is holding, and she has 4 different options at her disposal. The Teal mask, which is default, the Wellspring mask, which draws on the power of water
have that
and
one.
is balanced in both attacking and defending, the Hearthflame mask, which draws on the power of fire and makes her highly aggressive, and the Cornerstone mask, which draws on the power of stone and gives her excellent defenses. Upon terrestrialization, Ogerpon loses her grass typing and becomes the single type of the mask, unless she's wearing the teal mask where grass is her only typing. Ogerpon is obviously inspired by Oni, a creature from Japanese folklore that is basically an ogre. She's specifically inspired by Oni of northeastern Japan, which makes sense as that is the region that Kitakami is based on. And the last legendary Pokemon is Terapagos, the originator of the terrestrial phenomena and a cute little super powerful turtle. Terapagos has 3 forms: the normal form, which it takes on outside of battle, the terrestrial form, which it takes on when it enters battle, and the stellar form, which it transforms into upon terrestrialization. Each of these 3 forms gets progressively stronger, with the stellar form being one of the few Pokemon with a base stat total in the 700s. Terapagos is a prehistoric Pokemon that got trapped underground as a result of earthquakes, which led people to believe it was extinct. These earthquakes and seismic shifts might have been self-inflicted, as its stellar form is incredibly powerful, and we can see it causing deep cracks in the earth when it maintains this form. Stellar Terapagos is also the one that is written about in the Scarlet and Violet book, where it is described as a floating planet, which, like, valid description if we're being honest. This form has a unique ability that is kind of like Cloud9, but on steroids, as it will neutralize all weather effects and terrain effects when it is activated. Additionally, Terapagos does not suffer the drawbacks that are normally attributed to the stellar terrestrialization, most likely because it is the one that invented stellar terrestrialization. As for inspiration, there are a number of different turtles in mythology, and I think they all play a part in Terapagos. First is the rainbow-shelled turtle from Japanese folklore. Another is Minogame, a turtle that lived for 10,000 years and grew a tail of seaweed similar to Terapagos' tail. And finally is the world turtle, a common idea found in many mythologies around the world. This one is of course closely related to the stellar form, as it is described multiple times as a planet. And that's all the legendaries, which means we have just one last mythical to cover, Pecharunt. It does feel kind of anticlimactic to end with Pecharunt, especially after Terapagos, but it is what it is. Pecharunt makes poisonous mochi and likes to feed them to people and Pokemon. Those who eat it are chained to its will. This poison is generated in its shell, where it is then stored. And as we already stated, it is likely inspired by the story of Momotaro, or potentially the Peaches of Immortality in Chinese mythology. And that's all of them. I've got nothing else to say. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.
Awesome video, dude. That guy has good videos. Diamagi, hey, he makes good videos too. Damn, he almost got 1 million views in 2 days. How freaking popular is this guy? Oh, 2.5 mil.
PSA has the power to turn a singular Pokemon card into a multi-million-dollar asset. When Logan Paul's ultra-rare Pikachu Illustrator was given a PSA 10 grade, it became worth over $16 million. A single grade point lower and the card's value drops to
We
$1.4
call that
billion.
money laundering, baby.
One company has the ability to create or erase millions of dollars with a single number.
Money
There's
laundering.
bound to be corruption, and a recent
There you
pattern
go.
of major screw-ups has many people suspicious of PSA. They've authenticated cards that were altered to look perfect. Their grading system has been exposed as extremely inconsistent, and they've even admitted to straight up destroying high-value cards during their process.
What?
And those are just the mistakes that we can 100% prove. There are countless grading decisions that happen every single day that are losing people hundreds, thousands, and in extreme cases, millions of dollars. Which is why when you dig deeper into PSA, the more insane it becomes that a multi-billion-dollar industry revolves around a tiny number on a piece of plastic. Before PSA became synonymous with corporate greed, they were actually providing an extremely consumer-friendly service. PSA, which stands for Professional Sports Authenticator, offered a universal standard to determine how much a card was worth. Think back to elementary school at the lunch table. Your friend has a bag of chips, and you're willing to give up your ding-dong in exchange for it. The chips aren't objectively more valuable than the ding-dong, but if both of you are satisfied with the trade, then it really doesn't matter. Sports cards and trading cards used to be the same way. Maybe I wanted your Charizard card and you wanted my Pikachu card. We'd just swap them and be done with it. But eventually, how rare the cards were became a factor to consider in the trade. All of those factors is what PSA considered to determine how much a card was worth, which resulted in people paying big money for cards in all different niches. PSA essentially created the industry standard guide of what matters when buying or selling cards. In a close inspection, a trained PSA grader validates a card's authenticity, ensuring that it is officially licensed merchandise and not a knockoff. They assess any potential damage, such as rips, tears, scuffs, folds, and finally, they give a grade to the card's overall condition on a 1 to 10 scale. And at the end, they carefully encapsulate the card in a protective case to preserve its condition, with a label displaying its name and official PSA grade. Before PSA was rotting the industry from its core, it was actually meant to preserve the integrity of it. But as their power and influence grew, they started moving away from being a humble service for hobbyists and developing into a corporation fully fixated on profits. PSA expanded their company beyond just grading cards. They integrated with eBay to create the PSA Vault, which helps store, list, sell, and ship trading cards for their customers. So if you wanted to sell your recently graded card, you could have them take care of the entire selling process from start to finish with little effort. PSA even offered a buyback service where they would purchase the card directly after grading. And some interpret this as kind of a conflict of interest. You're handing a company your card, they're deciding how much it's worth, and then they're offering to buy it from you themselves.
Couldn't they give it a 9?
Reselling the card for a profit, they have every incentive to convince you that it's worth a little less than it actually is. It's like when Rick from Pawn Stars calls in one of his buddies to tell you what your rare artifact is worth, and almost every time, it's worth way less than what you thought it was. From there, PSA's parent company, which is confusingly called Collectors, also acquired rival grading services Beckett and SGC, getting them closer to becoming a monopoly. Today, PSA and its sister companies take up 80% of the total market, with PSA accounting for a whopping 72%.
What this sounds like to me?
Comes with an immense responsibility. The trading card market is now a multi-billion-dollar industry, and basically every collector on the planet relies on PSA's labels to determine that each card they received was authentic and in perfect condition. And when PSA makes mistakes, they aren't just minor disputes. They have the potential to be catastrophic errors that can bankrupt a collector. But before we get into that, we all live busy lives. There are so many things to do, and it never feels like there is enough time in the day. You should probably go get that yearly checkup to make sure you're in good health, but you don't have time to sit on hold all day. Today's sponsor, ZocDoc, makes the process a whole lot easier. ZocDoc lets you search and compare local, in-network doctors with more than 150,000 providers and over 200 specialties across all 50 states. You can view tons of reviews from real patients and detailed doctor profiles to help you choose the right one. ZocDoc lets you see actual appointment openings and click to instantly book a visit. Appointments happen fast, usually within 24 to 72 hours, and you can even score same-day appointments. Best of all, ZocDoc is free to use. Taking care of your health just got easier. Head to ZocDoc.com/PatrickCC to get started and check that appointment off your to-do list. In 2017, a 1952 Stan Musial baseball card sold for $2,800. It had slight imperfections, including a black dot on the border as well as a few small scuffs on his jersey. All things considered, the card was still in great condition and received a PSA grade 9. 7 months later, another copy of the card was sold, this time a PSA grade 10, for a price of $28,100. The problem is, these were the same exact card. The actual markings on the back of both were identical, meaning that someone had covered up its imperfections and resubmitted it to PSA, got a higher grade, and made tens of thousands of dollars. PSA is supposed to inspect every card closely before giving it a grade. It checks for scratches, scuffs, and imperfections, but it also ensures that the card is both authentic and unaltered. Like when you and I look at a PSA 8, 9, or 10, we just kind of say, yeah, I mean, it looks perfect. But PSA's job is to notice the tiny things that we never would. Maybe someone repainted a tiny white chip on the edge, or they trimmed a fraction of a millimeter off the border, or they managed to fix a crease that used to be there. And even still, you might wonder what the big deal is. I mean, if a card can be restored to pristine condition, then why should it matter if it was original or not? Well, it's because the history of a card is a major factor in its value. To see a card preserved for almost 70 years without a single flaw doesn't just make it worth more money, it's also just objectively cool. And this is not just true for cards, it's really true for about anything that is rare. The flowing hair silver dollar sold for $10 million in 2013. That's because this coin was the first dollar coin issued by the United States federal government in 1794.
Wow.
Somehow, someway, this little coin was preserved for 220 years. If nobody cared about preserving anything that was rare, then we'd all just buy one-to-one bootlegs. Authenticity matters, and PSA was meant to ensure all aspects of a card were authentic, but they messed up too many times to count. A Billy Maloney card from the early 1900s was purchased for $81 before being altered, regraded, and sold for a $900 profit. A 1952 Mickey Mantle card was altered and resold for $14,800. Ironically,
This is why every single card needs a serial
from
number.
1948 had its edges trimmed and sold for a nearly $2,000 profit. By 2019, hundreds of examples of altered cards that PSA had improperly graded had piled up, culminating in a class action lawsuit. The lawsuit went further than accusing PSA of making a few mistakes. It argued that trained graders should have been able to recognize the alteration and alleged that PSA knowingly allowed them to enter the market regardless. The situation became too large for PSA to ignore, and they announced an internal investigation into the matter. Now, to be fair, PSA grades millions of cards every year, and these alterations were done specifically by the seller to deceive trained authenticators into getting a higher grade. It is possible that these specific instances were genuine mistakes and someone just figured out how to beat the authenticators. But whether PSA approved the cards knowingly or made a genuine mistake, the result for buyers was the same. Altered cards entered the market with legitimate grades that people thought were original and could be sold for far more money than they were worth, which made people start to wonder if that little number in the corner could really be trusted. Sometimes customers are disappointed with the grade their card gets. Maybe they thought it was a perfect 10, but PSA found a small imperfection that bumped it down to a 9. The customer now has two choices. They can accept the result and sell the card, or they can resubmit it to PSA and hope for a better result. Pokemon card collector and YouTuber Pokemon Steven submitted approximately 10,000 cards to be graded by PSA over the past couple of years. A little under 200 of his cards received unsatisfactory gradings. He believed that these cards were actually 10s, so he decided to resubmit them on the off chance that someone had made a mistake, and the results were shocking.
81 PSA 10s from the regrade experiment. 189 cards in total, so 108 cards did not make the cut.
81 of the resubmitted cards were bumped up from a PSA 9 to a PSA 10. That's 42%.
That's
But he did
nuts.
not change the card at all. The corners, the art, the surface were all exactly the same as when he submitted them the first
That's
time.
insane.
The only thing that changed was the grade itself. And as discussed prior, the difference between these two grades can mean the difference of hundreds, thousands, and in extreme cases, millions of dollars. What one
That's
inspector
why I'm
views as
holding
a
on to
9,
mine.
the other may view as a 10, and it's starting to seem like the only difference is how lucky you are when your card is being reviewed. PSA's grading system is supposed to be an objective measurement of the card's condition, but as more controversies pile up, the grading seems subjective. Just goes to show that people are insane for paying such a massive premium for 10s. PSA is a huge scam, but resubmitting the card could also hurt its value. Another collector submitted over 100 cards to be regraded, 19 were given higher grades, but 34 of them were actually given a worse grade. But why does this happen?
How is that even
The
possible,
rules
man?
are clear enough. 4 perfectly sharp corners, full original gloss, no stains or no scratches, with a slight allowance for printing imperfections. The problem is that a human grader still has to decide what counts as perfect. Maybe there's a small mark in the artwork that one grader notices while the other one doesn't. What one grader sees as a printing imperfection, another may view as an unnatural defect that bumps its grade down. So now, submitting to PSA is like gambling, especially when you consider the fees associated with this process. process. Submitting to PSA for grading costs $25 per card plus shipping.
Oh,
They do offer slight
it's more than
discounts for
that.
bulk submissions. But think about it, if you get a low grade, your card could be worth less than 25 bucks, meaning it costs more to authenticate and grade than it's actually worth. However, if your card is worth more, PSA will charge you insane amounts of money to do the exact same grading as a worthless card, like Nico, who submitted his rare Mickey Mouse card that was worth $20,000 to PSA, only for them to charge him $1,000 for his perfect 10 grade, or Scruffy, who was charged $150 for a 10 grade 2021 Pokemon Sword and Shield Evolving Skies, and $600 for a 9 grade 2002 Charizard Reverse Foil. There's also John, who was told by PSA his card was worth $25,000, which is why he needed to pay them $1,000 to authenticate it, but then his card only sold for half the value they claimed it was worth. And no, they didn't give him a $500 discount and say, oops, we messed up. And he still made a great profit, but remember that the grading process for all of these cards is exactly the same, and you don't know what they are going to charge you until after they have already done the service. This has led some collectors to accuse PSA of intentionally having inconsistent grading so people will just keep submitting their cards for additional gradings. This is unlikely considering they've been shown to both overgrade and undergrade cards. Then again, there are stories that make it easy to understand why some collectors still remain skeptical. The most notable example of this is when a collector named Preston submitted 30 separate Pikachu Zekrom GX cards to PSA for grading. He anticipated that most of them would be perfect 10s, but he was shocked to discover that none of them received a perfect grade, with the vast majority of them receiving PSA 9s. In spite of his disappointment, Preston opted to sell the cards through PSA's buyback service. However, he kept records of the serial numbers on his cards and searched them later online to discover that 11 of them had been listed as perfect 10s. Around this time, a PSA 9 of this exact card was going for around $41, while a PSA 10 was nearly $200, meaning that PSA bought them from him as a 9 and sold them as a 10, and Preston missed out on around $1,500 for all 11 cards. And this highlights the conflict of interest I mentioned before. The only people who can change a grade are PSA themselves, so if they are authenticating and buying and selling cards, they could theoretically change the grade of any card to maximize their personal profits on the sale.
As you can see, this is a Legendary Collection Reverse PSA 10 Mankey that's listed on eBay by PSA themselves. But if this card is a PSA 10, then why does the back look like this? Because how are they listing a card that looks like this as a PSA 10 on eBay through the PSA eBay account?
They need to get sued more. It's all a scam. I hate that PSA is the one that got popular. However, PSA offered a different explanation. Supposedly, someone at PSA had seen Preston's original post on Twitter. They personally believed that the initial grading was too harsh and conducted a secondary manual review, resulting in updated gradings after Preston had already accepted their offer, which is shady. They conveniently realized that they messed up only after they already bought the cards from him and resold them for a profit. Luckily for Preston, his story got a lot of traction online, and he claims that they privately rectified the situation with him, which I would hope means that they gave him the money he deserves for the cards he unknowingly undersold to them. But that still doesn't feel like a satisfying.
I gotta pause. I'm gonna fill up my water bottle. I really like this video a lot, so I don't want to watch the whole thing. Hear me. Did I forget my water bottle like a dope? No, Yabby. Forgot my water bottle like a dope. That's nice.
conclusion, and it
Oh,
still
shit,
didn't
I gotta pee.
explain
Hold
why
on.
the card
Because I'm about to lock in for this raid. I heard that countdown timer. Oh, nice. 1 minute. Here we go. Woo!
cards were undergraded in the first place. A fellow collector claimed that cards tend to be undergraded by PSA when they receive bulk quantities of the same card. I guess the logic is
Freaking
that when you
scammers, dude.
look at the same card over and over again, you maybe start to see imperfections that aren't there. Or maybe the same person is just going over all of them and is like,
Scamas, dude.
surely they can't all be 10s, so here's a 9. But obviously that would be corrupt and unethical business practices. But
I know
most
that's right.
importantly, PSA did not make the situation right with Preston until after he went viral on social media and gave them bad publicity. Was Preston the only person this has ever happened to? Or was he just lucky enough to get attention online and
There
put
you go.
pressure on PSA to pay him what they owed? But one of the most insane controversies that
5,
gained traction online
4,
was when PSA
3,
admitted they
2,
damaged someone's
1.
extremely rare card, and many saw this as the final nail in the coffin for their reputation. A man named Brian revealed that his PSA 10 Pokemon card was severely damaged while getting it reholdered by PSA, bumping it all the way down to a grade 6.
Oh
The
my
card was
God.
a sky-splitting Deoxys, an extremely rare card released in limited quantities in 2004 and never printed in English. There were very few copies like this and in his condition, making Brian's card almost impossible to replace. Now, Brian was getting his card reholdered. Basically what this means is he already submitted it before and it got a 10, but he was paying them to crack open the old plastic case and seal the exact same card into a brand new holder. Collectors do this all the time if the slab gets scratched, cracked, or it just looks old. A fresh holder can make an expensive card easier to sell because buyers know the case is brand new and the card had recently been inspected. The problem is that the moment PSA cracks the case open, they're handling one of the rarest cards in the world, and if anything goes wrong, the damage is permanent. PSA acknowledged that they had damaged the card and offered to reimburse Brian the full market value, which they determined to be $20,000. He wasn't happy with this considering that the same card had sold for up to $45,000 around the same time, with others saying it was worth even more. Multiple people have told me that the Deoxys is $60,000 plus, and I personally have an offer over that. PSA fixed this issue. PSA got the $20,000 figure by averaging all of the recent sales of that same card. And this just seemed like a slap in the face because at best they're offering half and at worst a third of what it's actually worth. But the problem is they caused the loss of the card and then gave themselves the authority to decide how much that loss was worth. And rather than accepting their deal, Brian took to the internet. Once again, the community was furious, and this specific situation ramped up to a whole new level once Moist Critical made a video about it.
This is where it gets extremely spicy. That card sold only a couple of weeks ago by PSA. And this is where it gets a little conspiratorial, but I think there's a lot of merit to it. There are people that are speculating that they didn't actually damage his card when reholdering it. The encapsulation process, it's a
They
sign-up,
sold
it's
it.
not real. What they're thinking might have happened is PSA, when reholdering that PSA 10 Deoxys that was submitted, they took it and then sold it themselves, and then instead gave him a 6, saying that it was damaged and now it's it's down to a 6.
I guess PSA now stands for Pro Scam Artists. Critical brought awareness to this dispute far outside the card collecting community, putting PSA under more pressure than ever before. Brian announced they had come to an agreement that he was satisfied with, indicating that he was compensated for the proper market value of his card. By this point, the pattern becomes a bit too familiar. PSA rejected a complaint, the collector went public on the internet, and then the company changed their mind after the story went viral. There are dozens of other examples examples of PSA destroying their customers' cards, and you have to wonder if these individuals were ever given proper compensation. Probably not, because a massive YouTuber didn't make a video about them. And now I'm just genuinely curious if anyone watching has ever had this happen to them. Like, you submitted a card to PSA and you know for a 100% fact that they messed up your card and then sent it back but hoped that you'd never notice? Comment below if that happened. PSA's grade is supposed to be a symbol of reliability and prestige, but these days their reputation isn't much better than a sketchy pawn shop. And yet, people are still sending in millions of cards to PSA every single year. But why? Well, the thing is, most collectors don't continue to use PSA because they trust them. They continue because they have no other realistic option. There are other companies that do gradings, but a card with a PSA label can sell for far more than the same card graded by a competitor. Leaving PSA for another authenticator would significantly cut down the overall value of someone's collection. And with the prices for some of these cards, we're talking about millions of dollars in value right down the drain. Boycotting won't work because all collectors would have to do it together. The market has decided that PSA is the gold standard, and it's almost impossible to go against what the market wants. As long as buyers seek out PSA graded cards, sellers will continue to sell them, which means that they will just have to deal with whatever nonsense comes with working with PSA. This is why monopolies are supposed to be illegal. But above all else, PSA is just another example of how any hobby or niche eventually gets hijacked and exploited by corporations. The same thing happened with sneakers. Any regular person who wants to occasionally, maybe once a year or every other year, buy a nice pair of sneakers has to deal with insane price gouging, unavailability of sizes because collectors or resellers pay thousands of dollars just to let a pair collect dust on a shelf. Shoes turned into a status symbol, and now it's trading cards. Actually playing with your Pokemon card could scratch the artwork, and wearing your sneakers could scuff them up, which will devalue them, which is ironic because most people buy nice things because they want to actually use nice things, but the only way to protect the value is to avoid enjoying it for what it is. And unfortunately, no hobby is safe from this. It's only going to get worse. Once people begin to put a price on their favorite pastime, they make way for opportunists to take advantage of the hobby and get rich.
True.
PSA isn't just a tragic story of an innocent hobby being corrupted, it is a reminder that nothing you love is safe or sacred anymore. And PSA isn't the only business that's built an empire by telling people what their collectibles are worth. Pawn Stars made a fortune with these same questionable tactics. But check out this video to hear that story.
What's this Bo Burnham video? The heck game, come on. Nice, I need those gauntlets. Not because they're good, but because I want them for my set. Nothing. Psst. Relax, buddy. You don't need to do it all the time. Okay, let's see what we should watch. Hey, sure, we'll watch Ludwig talking about the same thing we just watched about.
Boys, we have opened a lot of Pokemon cards over the years, and every time we open it, you might notice a little sign that says the value that the card would be if it were PSA 10. You don't know, PSA is one of many grading companies, and I started questioning the grading system, so today we're gonna find out, is it a scam? Obviously, it's a bit of a scam in the sense of how much they charge you and how long it takes for you to get the card back. Yes. But what I'm actually curious about
My God, look
is
at the
difference
chat, bro.
amongst the different authenticators. Because you could go to a company like PSA or you could go to a company like Tag, and they use completely different systems to determine the grade of your card. So my question today is, how good are these companies at grading cards? Are there inconsistencies? Are they going to all be the same? Are they good at their job? Etc. So, to find out, we sent about 24, maybe 25 cards to 3 different grading card companies, okay? We got the cards back. We broke the cards open. We took those cards, sent them to Tag, got them graded, noted down the results, broke them, then sent them to PSA. Finally, we sent the cards to PSA. We graded all 25 cards, and those are now sitting in this box, okay? Now, you might be
5,
wondering, if
4,
you sent them and broke them,
3,
how do you know the grades of the
2,
cards? Do we just have to look at the
1.
spreadsheet? Lucky for us, I have my editor, Polite, who went through the painstaking process of noting down all the grades, and he made a bit of a video for us. So we're going to go through, watch the video of him reviewing
We're
the grades
watching-
from
oh my
System
God.
Tag, and then
We're
I'll
about to
go
watch a
down
video.
The PSA grade finally.
We're about to watch Ludwig watch a video. That's ridiculous.
A quick refresher on what the hell this stream idea even is. And I will tell you what has happened in between the first day when the cards were bought and the many months that have followed up until now. The original stream idea is giving chat $10,000 to buy Pokemon cards on eBay that we would then take and send to 3 different grading companies to compare the services. So from that stream, you guys bought about $9,000 worth of Pokemon cards, and then the last 1,000 was punted on the most dog shit gambling website I have ever seen.
It was genuinely atrocious. Like, it's such a scam. I still feel shame with the fact that I have money in this website.
But somehow the streamer always wins.
Baggy! Wait. Wait. I actually think this might be a good website.
Wait a second. Why did Ludwig copy my fucking hair?
Did I use the
Wha-
website?
Why did he copy my fucking hair, guy?
We got some of them, not all of them, because the eBay account was banned for suspicious activity. So maybe half of the cards that were bought on eBay actually shipped. These are all the cards that you bought, and these are the ones that survived.
Yeah, okay, so this was a hiccup in our plan. We tried to buy the cards on the eBay account, and then our account got banned. And then you might think, oh, buy them on a new account. Other people bought the cards, which kind of made life a bit harder. So we didn't get all of them. We don't have the base set 2 Charizard. We don't have the EX Blastoise, the EX Darkrai, the cool Porygon, the Megalodios. But we got a lot
I'm
of
so excited about 30th anniversary Pokemon, by the way.
Make a decision. Ludwig at the time was in China,
Jungle.
touching
Cool.
tips or whatever he does with the locals. I don't really know, and so we had to figure it out
not touching
on our own.
Tip to tip, not touching tips. Okay.
We had no way to contact him. So we decided to go out and buy replacement cards for the ones that did not ship from eBay.
Which I think is fair, because I think the ultimate experiment is not what cards you got from
Oh, no, that's the
eBay
game's
and how much
fault.
are they worth. Maybe that's part of it. I think the actual question is the difference amongst the grading companies.
We went and tried to match the cards to the best of our ability. Some of them ended up not being graded. Some of them were slightly different grades, but we got them close, I think.
There's also Ludwig's money, so
The fuck? Wait, what?
In a way, it's a company expense.
From our little shopping excursion, this is what we were left with. Of the cards, one of them is mine. The Groudon EX, I pulled myself like 12 years ago, and I would like it back.
Nope. No. If it's in the box, it is mine. And I paid for the grading, right? Okay, I paid for the grading. You know what? How about send an email to franchise@bricksandminifigs.com and we'll get back to you. How about that? No. I'm not a jackass. Send an email. Okay, I'm going to ask you to leave now. That's where I draw the line. I'm going to ask you to leave now.
But I figured rather than spending $500 more, I'll save us a little bit of headache. And I would like to apologize as well. My dumb ass did not record the raw cards that we had before sending them to CGC. I just recorded us breaking the slabbed cards out of their slabs. So apologies for not recording them. That's on me, but doesn't really change
And you're fired. Yep, there it is.
the experiment at all. So yeah, from that point, we sent everything to CGC first.
Dude, it would be so stressful to break open a box. I'm so glad I didn't have to do this part of the process. Because it's so easy to damage a Pokemon. Like, it's a fucking Pokemon card, bro. You know what I mean? Like you slightly chafe the corner. It's like, GG, there it goes.
Once we got those back, we sent them to Tag, and Tag does this cute little booster pack thing. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Okay, CGC to Tag to PSA. That's what we're doing today.
CGC and Tag, I've compiled this video just to show the grades that they got through the process. For PSA, I gave Lud the box of goodies so we can show everybody the grades live rather than finding out through a video. Of all the cards that we sent, there was only one that had this issue. One of the Charizards that we bought was tampered with. You can kind of see it. It's very hard to see in the footage, but if you look at the corners, you can tell that there used to be like whitening on the corners, you know, just from like general wear and tear. It's an older card, but it was painted over. So that card was denied from all 3 grading services. It was not given a grade with anybody. And of the 3 services, only CGC actually put it in like a cool case. The other 2 just said no. They just denied it outright. I don't think we got refunded for that. So it's like $100 per service that we use. So they essentially just...
Oh my God, fucking please subscribe. This is the point of the video where I'm asking you to please subscribe. I promise you this video is made actually less than $0. It is really just an experiment for you as a consumer. In exchange, all I ask is for your free subscription on YouTube. That is all I ask for. I'm losing a lot of money on this video, but I think it's a cool experiment. Now, a little bit of context that I don't know if Play will provide. If you don't know, PSA is obviously the biggest card grading company. It's the one you have the highest chance of having heard about. And it's also worth the most. Technically, a Beckett 10 is worth more, but Beckett is owned by PSA, so it's all under the same umbrella. But basically, a PSA 10 is usually the most valuable, okay, because it's the most well-known. CGC is known as kind of the easy grading company, you know, kind of, you know, free 10s. Like if you got a 9 at PSA, maybe send it to CGC and they might throw a 10 your way. They're a little soft. Okay, that's at least the reputation that they have. And then Tag's a little different. Actually, really, Tag's my favorite in terms of the way their cards look. I like the clear
Dude,
top.
it's so sick,
but
bro.
Tag's entire thing is like, we're taking the human element out. AI is going to determine the value of the cards because it's the most consistent across all metrics. And so that they do that. And you can actually, a cool thing with Tag because of that is you can scan your card and they'll tell you like 74% left shadowing, 83% right corner is mostly white, like whatever. You know, they try to get very analytical about their grading process. So that's the big 3 that we've sent them to today.
But yeah, as far as cards go, that's the only like super weird one. The rest are pretty normal. So that's it from me.
Card time. Okay, so this card, what? Hold the fuck up. I need everyone to pause. Okay, so a Mega Charizard at a PSA 10 is valued at $2,500. A PSA 9 is worth $360. CGC 7 is worth less than $230. It is literally worth more to have it ungraded than it is to have it at a grade 7. How did this happen? I just lost $250 instantly. Okay, let's check Tag. What? What did you shit on the card in between shipping? Play, what are we doing? There's not even a price point for a 6. Okay, we
Yeah,
may have
6
fucked
is,
this one. Son of a
I think
bitch!
everything under an
I
8
guess it's something
isn't
I
worth
should have
having.
considered. We are not just objectively rating the differences amongst all the grading card companies. We also are dealing with the human error of breaking open cards and sending them back in for grading. Now
Breaking
we
up
have
in
our
slabs,
final
dude.
reveal,
Nuts.
which is what PSA has graded it at. PSA used to grade this card as a 10, or excuse me, a 9, and our grade is
An 8.
Wait, what? So they did bend it, but interestingly, Tag was the strictest of the grading card companies because they gave it a 6. CGC gave it a 7, and PSA gave it an 8. And PSA, bear in mind, is the most valuable of the 3. So the card, ultimately, though, went from a $500 card, PSA 9, to a maybe $300 card, PSA 8. On to the next one. So this next card is the Shaman. So the Shaman we bought at a PSA grading. So about, I would say, half the cards we bought already graded, and we broke them and sent them in. So this Shaman was purchased as a PSA 8. We purchased this for $59 as a PSA 8. We sent it into CGC, and they came back with an 8. So so far, this is what I expected to have happen. Let's see what Tag graded it. Okay, also an 8. Okay, this is kind of interesting. So we had a PSA 8 that we broke. We sent to CGC, it was an 8. We sent to Tag, it was an 8. And now, you would think but for all intents and purposes, this should just say 8.
Mm-hmm. Oh!
You're fucking kidding me. It's a 7. It's a 7. So we can actually see, this is part of the reason I think Tag is kind of cool. They give you this information about your card. And so you can see like, okay, yeah, you know what? I see all this sort of white shit. I do think the top is a little bit thinner than the bottom, or maybe the left side's a bit thinner than the right side. It's not the perfect centering. They give you a 360 view of your slab. Defects identified. Back left has edge wear. Bottom right, here's the corner wear.
Dude,
bottom
this is
left,
awesome that they
here's
give you
some
that
more
much
corner
information,
wear.
though.
There's some
We
edge
should be
view.
just be going with
Yeah,
Tag,
look at
dude.
this. So this is actually why I think Tag is actually kind of cool. A, because I think the slabs look nicer, but B, like, this is fun information to see.
Bro, that's sick,
so
man.
Anyway, Tag graded this an 8. PSA, I don't know how PSA does it. I think they just have a fucking guy who's like a little drunk and he just fucking does one of these. 7. Throws it, and then I'm pretty sure they take a 2 to 4 week break, and then they come back to do one more card, which is why it takes about 4 months to get your cards back. So, if you are curious, we went from a PSA 8, which was valued at least, excuse me, it was purchased for $59. And what we have received back, PSA 7, which is currently worth $47 last sale. So we lost $12 on that card. Full disclosure, guys, I did lose a crazy amount of money on all of this, obviously. Grading is very expensive. And when you have to grade one card 3 times, basically makes it instantly like net negative. Like there's no card will be more valuable than what we spent into it. I'm more so curious if we made any money regrading, ignoring the grading costs. Just out of curiosity, not for like money making purposes. Okay, next card. Okay, so this one we didn't have a grade initially. The EV Alt promo. Let's take a look here. So it was graded a 9 by CGC, which is fine. We didn't have a grade initially. So that's this card right here. At a PSA 10, it's worth $156. At a PSA 9, it's worth $28, which makes sense. PSA 10 has a crazy high comparative. We purchased this card for $10. So actually,
that's a good card. That's a sick card, dude.
We purchased a card for $10. I wonder what it was for Tag though. 8.5. Okay, so a little bit of value lost there. A little bit of value, slight difference there. An 8.5 is worth maybe $20. Still double the money. But what actually matters, excuse me, is the PSA grading, because that is our final grade that we have. So here it is.
He's gonna break his nice teeth.
A 7.
4, 3.
So CGC
2,
in this case
1.
does follow the trope of being the softest. I will say This still was a great deal because we purchased this card for $10. Unfortunately, we made $6 on the card. Our next card is going to be the Vaporeon EX. So for reference, this card, Vaporeon EX, let me see if I can find it here. This was a pricier card. We bought it for $155. And it came ungraded. This card is at a PSA 10, $1,000. At a 9, $270. And reminder, we purchased it for $150. So let's take a look. As long as it's an 8, I'm happy. Okay, a CGC 9. That's pretty good. Let's see if we keep the 9 with tag.
8.5.
Okay, 8.5.
Dude, the tag slabs are so
Tag
sick,
seems
bro.
to be more like stricter about their 9s. That's twice now that a CGC 9 is a tag 8.5. Wait, if we're following trends, that means that PSA gave this a fucking 7. Come on, just don't be a 7.
Nice, nice.
A 9. I mean, that's a pull. That's great. We purchased this card for $150. It is valued at $270 with this slab around it. So tag was the strictest with this card. They gave it an 8.5.
But how
dings.
there's so
centering-
much inconsistency.
Oh yeah, the centering's horrible.
It's
If you look
wild,
at the left,
man.
look how much chunkier the left is than the right. And even the top than the bottom. Yeah, the centering's bad. I agree with that. Dude, tag is actually awesome. It had it had almost perfect surfacing. Corners were fine. Back corners were a little rough. So it really came down to this edge here. I almost have like more respect for tag's grading because I have some evidence to back up their grade. As opposed to PSA, which I gave them the most money in the longest amount of time, and they just fucking rolled a random number generator. Our next card is going to be the Megalodius EX. So for reference, the Megalodius was
a decent
an
card.
$80 card. This was the one that they purchased IRL because the eBay shipment didn't come. So PSA 10 is a $300 card. Ungraded, it's 80, and we got it for 80. So we actually got a pretty good deal on it. What's CGC give us?
7.5.
Oh.
Rough.
Okay, that's okay. Tag, an 8.5. Wow. They gave it 1 point higher on tag. Guys, what are your guesses for PSA? Your guesses are as good as mine. It literally could be a 6. It could be a 9. I have no clue. It's a 9. It's a 9. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're fucking doing. They have no idea what they are doing at that facility. They're fucking crazy people. This is our next card. Erica's Hospitality. So this card was purchased for $100 in person. Its retail value is $115. So we got a slightly good deal, like an 85% value. And a PSA 10 of this is $285. It looks really good, to be honest. I would be shocked if this is not a 9. Okay. That's CGC. They're drunk at that company. Literally everyone at that company is drunk. It's totally fine. Tag is what actually matters. I'm sure with tag, it probably got like an 8. Okay. 6.5. Are we looking at the same card? Let's take a look. Why did it get a 6.5? Oh, the surfacing is a problem. Oh, yeah. Look at these lines. Like, I understand that they're pinging the back because the surfacing on the back is rated 625 out of 1,000. And if you look at it, it looks like, I mean, bro, it looks like me in middle school, like filled with fucking acne everywhere. But when I look at the card IRL, like it looks fine. Well, here's the question. What did PSA give it?
A 9. This is so wild, dude. The inconsistencies between the companies is fucking
That's great.
insane.
It got a 6.5. And I got a 2.5 point better score at PSA. Okay, this can't be true, but like my current hypothesis that I'm thinking about is like, because tag does this same exact grading system for everybody, like they show you all this analytics, it means that they have to track this information. And because this card is kind of unique in the sense that all of the issues come with blemishes on the surface of the back, which aren't really visible to the human eye, which is totally fine. But then you give it the fucking, Korean skincare acne scan, and you're like, ooh, hideous. But I feel like if a human was just looking at this and they were doing this, they'd be like, yeah, that's a 9. I don't know why CGC also graded low. I don't know if PSA scans the cards. I have no clue. All I know is that this absolutely does not deserve a 9, but we are happy to take our payday. This card is now valued at $125. We purchased it for $100 as a $25 page up. Next card. This one is my favorite card we're going to be looking at today. Guys, we are looking at the Megalopunny. Isn't she beautiful? The Megalopunny was purchased from eBay for $35 as a PSA 8. So bear in mind, this card came pre-graded. We broke it open and got it regraded. Well, look at that. It was initially a PSA 8. It went to CGC. They gave it a 9. If there's any continuity, it should be a tag 8.5. That's my guess. Okay, an 8. All right. That makes sense.
And
That
the
makes sense.
tag
So far,
slabs are
tag
just so
seems to be
cool,
by
man.
far the stingiest. A tag 8. I think this is also a fair grade. What do we think PSA is going to grade this at? And here's where it's really funny to me. They already graded it. They literally looked at this card and they said, "Oh, that's an 8." So it would be weird if they graded it again and got any number different than an 8. Well, this is what they gave it.
9.
They're a joke. They're an absolute joke of a company. They are a joke failure of a company. We are not even halfway through our cards. I'm mind blown. This company is a fucking joke, bro. It's pathetic.
Dude, I love
They
that.
can't even get their own grades consistent. How are you gonna look at the same card and go 8 and then 9? How do you even do that? Because it got upgraded from an 8 to now a 9, and we initially
Probably doubled
purchased
its price.
for $35. The card is now worth $23. Oh, we overpaid for this card, so we actually lost $10. Higher grade though. All right, boys, our next card. She's back. It's the Lopunny Jigglypuff Tag Team. This card costs $240. Centering seems fine. I don't see any issues with the surfacing. Oh, no, I do. Yeah, there's a big issue with the surfacing on the back, I think. And then the corners are fucked up. This won't get more than an 8. CGC gives it a 7. I think that's fair. It's not a nice card. It's pretty bad. Ooh, yuck. Fuck me, that is our lowest grade of the day. What are the issues with this card? Look at this edge on the top. Horrendous. Again, the centering's fine. There seems to be a corner ding on the bottom left and the front. So the biggest issue was the surfacing on the back. It got a 600 out of 1,000. And then the corners were kind of ugly everywhere. But if my theory's correct, if the biggest issue is
Gotta
surfacing,
focus on
right?
this boss fight.
This is the biggest issue, right? We look at the acne cam.
Because it has a
kinda looks
mechanic that I can
fine
like the raid.
without this cam.
Ah! Oh my god. Don't keep pulling them. Yeah. Come on, somebody get a fucking binding so we can make some fucking money in this raid. But I'm trying to buy those gauntlets of might though, for real. Sometimes they start them off mad low.
Camera. I think the top edge is still visibly bad to the human eye, but I feel like PSA doesn't look at surfaces the same way Tag does. So my guess is that this is going to be higher than a 6. That's fucking crazy. I think we found a hole in the PSA grading system. I don't think they check surfacing. So our next card is the
What is this from?
Ooh,
he did
Giratina
this. This is from this week.
V-Star Gold.
Why did it fuck up? The fuck is that, man?
This is the biggest issue, right? We look at the acne cam. It kind of looks fine
Acne.
without this camera.
Wait, didn't we
I
see
think
this?
the top edge is still visibly bad to the human eye, but I feel like PSA doesn't look at surfaces the same way Tag does. So my guess is that this is going to be higher than a 6. That's fucking crazy. I think we found a hole in the PSA grading system. I don't think they check surfacing. So our next card is the Giratina V-Star Gold. I pronounce it Giratina. Fucking come at me. Yes, I pronounce Pokemon names wrong. This card was very expensive. This card cost $270. It seems like we got a pretty good deal because ungraded, this card is selling for $365. And a PSA 9 is $350. So it seems like people are purchasing this ungraded, and it seems to be selling pretty consistently for about $350. I mean, I think this might get an 8. I think this might get a 9. What'd I tell you? CGC 9. So if it's a CGC 9, it's going to be a tag 8 or 8.5. Woo! Wait! Could this be a PSA 10? So really the only issue with this card is the centering. I think my guess is that PSA gave it a 9. I think they're good enough at checking centering. So I think it'll be a PSA 9. Let's take a look.
No.
Is this the first card we got, by the way, that got 3 9s in a row?
Yeah.
Is this the only card so far that has been consistent across the board? We're on our 9th card. This is the first time every single grade was the same. Either way, this was our greatest pull of the day. It's a PSA 9. It's worth $350. We paid $270. It's $80 more valuable than what we paid for it. And for the first time, every company got it right. This card is maybe one of our most valuable cards. This is Umbreon. It's the Umbreon Gold Star Celebrations. I don't know how much we paid for this. A viewer sent it to me. Mods, I have this card ungraded. I'll send it to Ludwig.
Hey, he covered my hair. I told you.
To Ascended Belly Bolt Sir in chat. Wait, B_pay gifted it to me. Arigato
Copy my freaking hair, Ludwig. I see you, brother.
I'm looking at the card right now, and I genuinely think this might get a 10. Okay, let's see if we can go 10, 10, 10. PSA, do not fuck me on this. It is a tag 10 and a CGC 10. It has one small ding on the top. It's got perfect corners. The centering's good enough. This should be a 10 from PSA. Do not fuck me now. 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10.
Gotta be
10,
right.
10, 10.
No, 9.
I want to fucking cry. You're fucking me. A 9. Why? It just went from $460 to $150. It lost 66% of its value instantly because the dumbasses at PSA. Oh my God.
I like the PSA's getting hate though. I do like it.
I think there's some credit to the conspiracy that PSA is less likely to give you 10s because of population control. They don't want to start gifting 10s free willy-nilly because then the market's flooded with 10s. So I almost feel like there's a strategy you should implement. If you think your card is a 10, you should send it to tag. If you think your card could be like a 9, then you send it to PSA. Because I think PSA will just fuck you for no reason. Like there's no argument for this being a 9. 2 other grading companies gave it a 10. Well, anyway, we got this card for free, and the final value of the card is $124, down from $450, which it was worth before we regraded it. I lost $300 for regrading a card. Okay, guys, next card. This is the Umbreon Heart Gold Soul Silver Undaunted. It's a beautiful card. Umbreon cards are usually very expensive. This one is no exception. We purchased this as a PSA 8. So we had to break open the slab and send it to get regraded. This card was purchased for $500. It's currently worth, the last sale for a PSA 8 is $1,100. So we got a really, really good deal on this card. If you were to get a PSA 10 of this exact card, it would be worth $8,000.
Yeah, $20,000.
Let's see what CGC gave it first. This is for a possible $20,000 card. It was a PSA 8. CGC gives it a 7.5. Tag gives it a 7. Let's see what it got from Tag directly. Why did it get a 7? Yeah, the front surface has a bunch of cracks here. And then there's a fuck ton of dings. Holy shit, look at the dings. The biggest issue with it to me
Yeah,
is
they be
the
going like
surfacing.
Mike. They be
If
going super
surfacing
super
is
zoomed
its
in.
main issue, and it got a bad grade from CGC and Tag, we should see our highest grade from PSA. Now, PSA already graded this card an 8. So if they're good at the job, it should be an 8 again. Fucking cocksucker company. 7. Ah! Okay. It is a PSA 7. We have lost $500 of value. PSA 8 is worth $1,100.
Ooh, I got some
PSA 7 is
serious
worth
sun on my back. I
$600.
can feel it.
We still made $100 on the card though because we got it for a good deal. Next card, we have a first edition. This is the Wizards of the Coast collection.
Ooh,
It is
Koga's
Koga's
Beedrill.
Beedrill.
Harrison
I
had
think
one of
it's
those
from
when we were
Gym
kids. I
Heroes.
know that he had that
This is
card
the
because
card
I
got
always
from the
liked that
Gambling,
card because I like
Goka.
Goka.
Website. So I got this, I don't know for how much. I would guess this should get an 8.5. 8. Okay, I think it's fine. I think 8. I think
CGC
Tag
8.
is also going to give it an 8. That makes sense.
Yep. Man,
Okay,
I just can't
so
get over
it got
how
an
cool the
8 from
tag slabs
CGC,
look,
it got
man.
An 8 from Tag. PSA has ranked this one
An 8.
an 8 as well. Good job. You guys have done it. For the second time today, we have across the board 8s. I do think the companies are generally better at grading the old cards because A, there's less going on with the cards, and B, I think they're also more valuable, so they put more time into it. I think the newer cards are just fucking guessing. All right, next card, y'all. It is the XY
bad.
Blackstar Promo Blastoise.
Bro, it's crazy, bro.
This card was
He's
paid
just so
$145
popular and
and
successful, man.
purchased IRL.
Ooh, I like
Small
Blastoise.
edge problem. No, this won't get a 10. I don't think this will get it. This will maybe it could get a 9, but it should be an 8. Yeah, okay. There's the CGC 8. I think it'll be a tag 8. Tag 7. Why? Oh, look at this. Look at this line. It almost looks like somebody tried to cut it at the wrong place or something. I mean, I'll come totally clean. I don't even see this line with my eye. Okay, if my PSA theory's correct, if tag 8 is a 7, I think this will be above a 7 from PSA. 7. I think this is our first time the CGC had the highest grade. A CGC 8, a PSA and tag 7. Okay, guys, next card. It is a Tyranitar EX. It's
Cool
definitely
card.
not our prettiest card in terms of
It
its
looks
ability
sick,
to
man.
Get a 10 here. We purchased this card for $189. We actually purchased it as a PSA 6. 7.5. Wow. Okay, already a world of difference. I do think a 6 was weirdly aggressive. 6 is usually indicative of a much larger problem with the card that I don't see on it, but maybe there's some surfacing issues that a company like Tag sees. A 7. So Tag gives it a 7. The reason they give it a 7 and not a higher grade, you can see all these dings. So this is all the issues with it. They're pretty minor, but they're all, you know, they add up. And then the front surfacing seems to be the biggest issue that they've marked. So it's the back corners and then the front surfacing. What's the issue with the front surfacing? Oh my God, it looks like craters on the fucking moon. What is this giant fucking crater in my card, bro? Okay, so PSA already graded this card a 6. Are they able to get the same grade twice? Sons of bitches nailed it. This is what I expected for all the cards today, by the way. I expected PSA to be the stingiest grader on all the cards. I think what I've actually learned is that PSA is random. Like, I think
They seem to be the
CGC
least
and
consistent.
Tag have been within, like, at least a half-point deviation, standard deviation, almost every time. And for whatever reason, Tag standard deviation from the other two companies is like 1+. I don't know why. It's like wildly different. Okay, our next card. Ooh, speaking of Charizard, I think this is a metal promo card, yeah? 2021 Pokemon Celebrations Charizard. So ungraded, this card is worth $326. As a PSA 10, it is worth $10,000. I will tell you right now, this won't be getting a 10. There's a huge fucking ding on the back. A 7, I think, is reasonable for this card. All right, what did Tag give it? Probably worse. Rejected. Oh, Tag doesn't do metal cards. So it got only a 7 from CGC. I'm guessing it's going to be a 7. Thank God for PSA, those trunk motherfuckers. We got an 8! Anyway, let's go to our next card. This one is Polite's card that I'm stealing from him. It's got quite a few dings. This card's going to come back as a 6.5. 7.5. Okay, 7.5. I think we're going to have a more strict grade from Tag. I would be shocked if they gave it more than a 7. Did I not say 6.5? I literally read a chat message that said, Ludwig, they don't do 6.5s. Did I not say 6.5? Did I not bar for bar call? I can do this job. It's an easy job. This card is a really valuable card, by the way. At a PSA 10, it's 12,000. At a PSA 9, it's a 2,500. And even an 8 is almost $1,000. So this card is worth a lot of money. It's also peaking in value, as all Pokemon cards are. So why did it get such a low score, you might ask? Well, look at all the dings. The centering is.
Can we
the
hurry
best
this
part
right
of
up?
the
I gotta
card,
go.
but the
I
back
gotta take a
corners are
shower,
really
man.
rough, the back surface isn't good, and then the edges are the worst part of it. The back edges are really bad. It kind of looks like a small mouse bit it. All right, let's see what PSA gave it. So it got a 7.5 and then a 6.5. And PSA?
Got 10 more minutes of this video.
Wow, a 6.
And we're done with the stream after this video.
Damn, okay. The strictest grading of the day goes to PSA for Team Magma. All right, next card. Greninja EX. It's a really pretty card. The art's nice.
Pretty
It's
sick.
got beautiful color. It's also a newer card. This card, ungraded, is worth $313. Excuse me, $320.
Huge.
I think newer cards generally are more likely to get 10s. So the graded versions aren't actually more valuable unless it's a 10. Like an ungraded version of the Greninja EX is almost the same value as a
Eighter.
PSA 9.
Oh, wow.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a 9.
Yeah,
and
people
it
are
could
mostly
get a
just
10. I'm not
collecting
saying
and
it's likely
buying
it gets a 10,
10s.
but it's definitely a 9. Bang! What did I tell you? Now the question is, we have had one other card that got a CGC 10 and a Tag 10, but failed to get the PSA 10. Let's see. Okay, a Tag 9 with a 936 grading. The centering is just too left-right. You can see it pretty clearly, like how thin this is compared to this
Man,
side.
isn't this so
I'm
crazy that like
guessing
this is
PSA
what
gonna
this
give
game has
a
become?
9. I would be very shocked to see a 10 here because I think PSA is the strictest on 10s. But let's find out. It's a 9. All right, guys, this one is one of our most valuable cards and probably my favorite card we're going to open or look at today. It's the Van Gogh Pikachu. This card fucking rules. We purchased this as a PSA 8, broke it, and sent it into CGC, Tag, and back to PSA. It certainly isn't going to be a 10. If it was, holy shit, would we be up? I'm guessing we're going to get 8s across the board. Oh. Okay. CGC 9. All right. I don't think Tag will give us a 9. I think Tag will give us an 8. Okay. Actually, a higher grade. I mean, if we upgrade this from an 8 to a 9, it's like a $200 page up. All right. Let's see it. Oh, it's an upgrade. It's a 9. Wow. Okay. So to be clear, what I did is I purchased a PSA 8 card on eBay. I broke it open. I sent it back to the company that gave it the 8, and they added one number to it, which instantly added $250 of value.
4,
if you just
3,
think about it,
2,
the whole purpose of the
1.
company is to give you an accurate grade on the card. And consistently, PSA is unable to produce the same grade for the same card. Just consistently, they're unable to do it. This next one is
Wild.
from Gambling. It's the Yamato One Piece card. It's our
I'm
first
interested. I wonder how long they're going to be able to
non-Pokemon
stay in
card of the
business
day.
if they are this
All right, let's see what we
inconsistent.
got for it.
I mean, I think folks are going to start moving away from
9.
PSA because of
A
the
9
wait
from
times,
CGC.
because of
A
the
10
price,
for
because of the
Tag.
inconsistencies.
A 954, which is borderline 10. It's 5 points from a 10. Okay, so a 10 from Tag would be worth $110. Will this be our first PSA 10 of the day? Let's find out.
Yeah.
Oh, it is! Okay! I'm like kind of speechless because we didn't even get a CGC 10. And bear in mind, CGC has 2 different levels of 10. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a 10 and a pristine 10. We got a 9 from CGC and a 10 from PSA. Okay, here's my theory. Not many people grade this card. I think because the population of it is so low in like the grading system, PSA is more likely to give it a 10 because they don't give a fuck. But if there was like 100 10s or 5,000 10s or whatever, then they're like, nope, gotta give it a 9. Can't have too many 10s. Either way, guys, it's $110. I think we're up like, I don't know, at least $50 on this card. And our first PSA 10 of the day. Well, we're not done with One Piece, and we have a much more valuable One Piece card coming up. This card was a crazy pull. This was from the Gamble website. This card is worth $1,700. I'm talking about the Porcus de Ace manga. I think it is our most valuable card. PSA 10 is worth over $3,000, and I think this could get a 10. I have no clue. I genuinely have no clue what it's worth. Let's find out. Our first pristine 10. So this is the crown jewel that CGC can give. Unmute the audio. No. What is this song?
Hey, Ludwig, there's been an accident. I don't know how this happened. All I know is somewhere along the lines, I fucked it. I botched it. This thing went from a perfect black label 10 to a 9. Yes, sir, it has been fucking murdered. All I can really tell is when I ripped the slab open, it looks like the corner dinged the frame in the CGC slab, and it created this microscopic, it's genuinely the smallest ding I have ever seen in my life, and that tanked it to a 9 from what was considered a genuine all-around perfect card.
If you get a perfect 10 like that, bro, you can't even regrade that one. That ain't even worth it.
There's a cool Porygon in the box that I bought with my own money. It's all yours. It's all yours, buddy. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Anyways, pretty sure that's the only one. So, sorry. Oops. Oopsies. Oops. Okay. I'm sorry, man.
Well, I guess maybe that's something we should note. You're gonna crack and regrade. There's a chance you fuck it up.
That is true.
The last sale for a pristine 10 was $3,500, and that was back in March. It's probably worth more by now. We shouldn't have regraded a pristine 10, bro. It's too beautiful.
It's too risky.
It looks so beautiful.
You can't do that, dog.
Guys,
That's a mistake.
Please subscribe. It's all I can ask for. The only pristine 10 that is available for purchase is sitting at $6,000. I think it's safe to say that it's probably a $5,000 card. And as a 9, it's worth $1,600.
Still worth $600. Look at that he made, right?
It just looks so nice. Okay, next card.
All right, cool.
Okay,
Ludwig.
CGC gives it a 9. Let's get an upgrade here. Make my day. Please make my day. Tag gives it an 8.5 with an 876 score. There's a universe PSA gives it 10 here. Or excuse me, a 9 here, not a 10. There's a universe we get a 9 here.
It's a fossil Dragonite foil.
Please make me happy.
Very nice card. It's getting a 9 for sure. Boom. 8.
Can't hate consistency. Our next card is a Shadowless Mewtwo. This card was purchased for $160. Guys, we purchased it from eBay as a PSA, get this, 6. A 10 is worth $11,000. This is not going to get a 10. But even if it goes up to a 7, it doubles in value. The last 7 sold for about $320. It was a 6. Whoa. 7.5. That's a pretty big difference. What does Tag give it?
What?
Hey.
What? How is it 2 points off? It started as a PSA 6. It gets a 7.5 from CGC and then a 5.5 from Tag. Almost a 5, by the way. What does the PSA grade say? They are the king of consistency. So I think PSA
No, they are
been
not. What?
pretty good with the OG cards. I will say with the OG cards, they seem pretty consistent. I think this mostly comes down to surfacing. All right, guys, there are only 2
Come on, man.
cards
Let's
left.
finish this off. I got
Our
shit to
next
do, y'all.
one, another Mewtwo. This one is first edition.
Sabrina Rockets Mewtwo.
It
That's
is
a cool
Team
card.
Rockets Mewtwo. This card was purchased as an PSA 8.5 in person for $1,000. A PSA 10 is worth $8,000. A PSA 9 is worth $1,600, and a 8 is worth $800. So it makes sense we paid $1,000. Okay. CGC with the highest grade again. They give it a 9. Tag, also a 9. Okay, wait, hold up. This actually could make money here. Tag gave it a 907, which is just over the line for a 9. The centering is actually really good for this card. I think the issue is going to come from some surfacing issues. The biggest issue seems to be the back corners, which I think is pretty clear to everyone, right? This corner looks pretty bad. This corner looks pretty bad. All right, what does PSA give it? Again, we purchased it as a PSA 8.5.
The Adams in the card that did 7. Oof.
What? I hate this stream. What do you mean? What do you mean a 7? That's 1.5 below what you graded. Oh my God. It's a flat 7. It's worth $550. We purchased it for $1,000. It's worth we lost $500. No, sorry, we lost fucking $3,000. We lost $5,000. We lost $5,000. We lost everything. We have 1 card left. Tim, please. Tim, please, bro. Please, bro. Please. It's hard to feel bad for a guy with $1 million. I don't have $1 million. I'm a multi-millionaire. And the cardboard still gets me emotional. I'm actually genuinely fucked up about that, though. Our final card today, boys. It's the grail of Pokemon card collecting. It's the one you've seen the most. But maybe not the version you've seen the most.
Shadowless Charizard.
Our final card today, it's going to be that Charizard. It is a base set 2 Holo Charizard. It is obviously not as valuable as a first ed or even a base set. This Charizard at a PSA 10 is worth $12,000. We purchased this card IRL as a PSA 6 for $370. It'll be our final card of our experiment today. Let's see if we can get lucky. We just need a higher number than a 6. CGC gives it a 7. We're up. We're up. Tag.
Oh,
6.
not good, bro.
That's 1 point off a 6.5, no?
That's bad.
Not good.
It's got bad centering. It's got an
That's
edge
what
dim,
that,
2
but that's
corner
what they
dims,
bought it
3
at. What the
surface
fuck?
dings.
Why would you expect it to come back better than what you
Started
bought it
as
at?
a
I would
6.
never expect that.
But is PSA actually consistent?
7. Hey up.
7! Let's go! With that, we have gained $100 of value.
Which is probably cost $40 to send it in, you know? You can't crack open a
look at
pristine
it.
10, bro. Come on now.
Okay,
Don't do that.
what was the point of this experiment? Was it to hurt me? We came into this experiment trying to discern the
Come on, man. Let's speed this up. I got stuff to do, dog. I still got my kitchen and motherfucking clean, too.
Tag and PSA. And also, the consistency of PSA versus PSA. I think it's pretty clear there is no consistency. It is possible
I know that's
to
right.
have a 2.5 difference between one grading card company to another. It's possible to have a 1 point grading difference from the same company that you give it to twice. I think PSA's chokehold on card grading, their monopoly, is a farce. I think they are bad at their jobs. I think they are genuinely bad at their jobs. I think Tag, I think they're the GOAT. Why? Because they actually give you the information of why they gave your card that grade. They also tell you a 1,000 point scale where your card lies, so you can exactly know the system they took to get that grade. I also think they have the best looking cases. I think PSA's cases are kind of ugly, to be honest. I will say,
I do think so
CGC
too.
has value. You're more likely to get a 10, and that black label pristine 10 was beautiful, bro. That was a beautiful case. So I feel like what you should do, if you want to gamble, send your shit to PSA. If you think it looks like a 10, send it to CGC. And if you just want to grade it to have a graded card, go to Tag. That's probably my most unbiased analysis. If you're curious how much money it made, don't listen to this number. That's just based off the raw money we spent versus the money we received. This whole experiment lost probably $10,000. Grading alone cost $6,000, and I'm not going to resell these cards. So I consider the value of these cards lost, and I probably spent another $8,500 on all the cards. So $8,500 on all the cards, and the final value of all of our cards is $8,000. So we're about $5,000 short. I actually think I might need to give away this card. I genuinely don't think I can look at this card with any joy in my heart.
All right, we're ending the stream with that video. Yeah, and not even it was a pristine 10. It was a perfect condition card. All right, we're good to go. Thank you guys for watching. I will be back at it again tomorrow. We're doing 30 days straight of streams, just goofing around. We're mostly just. I'm trying to think what big things can we do that will be fun to watch for long periods of time. The video we just watched, great. I just don't have cards open like that. I mean, like, next time that I rip packs, we'll do it live on stream. But that's like, I don't rip packs very often. I'm trying to resist buying Pokemon cards until 30th anniversary comes out, which is months from now. So we'll see if I can resist that long. But hopefully I can. But we'll see. But thank you guys for watching. We'll be back at it tomorrow with some more streaming antics. And yeah. I really want to. How am I going to break out to let folks know that I am as entertaining as some of the other folks that are on this platform? Because I am. And I can continue to be. I mean, even that alone is worth coming to the stream, dude. Just come watch Tavi, if not me. I'm also in line for Prismatic Evolutions 2-pack booster bundles for $80 in the Walmart queue. I've never bought anything like this from Walmart before, so we'll see if I can actually get it. That would be awesome if I could. We'll see. And then we'll be back tomorrow. See you guys then. Thank you guys for watching. Catch you next time. Hit follow. Hit follow. Hit subscribe. Turn on notifications. Then just come hang out when we go live. Even if you're just going to lurk, do it anyway. We'll see you next time.